One afternoon, I received a call from an unusual person. It was Elizabeth, my best friend who had stolen Matthew, my ex-husband, from me 10 years ago. Reluctantly, I decided to answer the phone. Then, without much of a greeting, Elizabeth dropped a bombshell. I had twins. I'd like an $18,000 baby shower gift, please. To think she had the nerve to ask me for such a thing after taking Matthew from me. Such feelings began to surface, but thanks to Joseph, who was looking at me with concern, I came back to my senses. That's right. I have Joseph now. Elizabeth, receiving no response from me, pressed for an answer. I replied to her with a cheerful voice. Sure. I'll bring it over with my husband, the bank president. What? I could hear Elizabeth's pitiful voice. I continued. I've remarried. Why didn't you tell me? That's obvious, isn't it? I didn't want you to steal him too. We're best friends, aren't we? Elizabeth screamed about being heartless, but I couldn't help laughing. And slowly, I replied to her words. The one who betrayed first was you. At that, Elizabeth was at a loss for words. I unilaterally ended the call and explained the situation to Joseph beside me. And so, I decided to proceed with my plan for revenge. My name is Linda, a 45-year-old housewife. I live a happy married life with my husband Joseph and our 2 children. It's my second marriage to Joseph. Joseph was a single father with 2 children already. Meeting Joseph, I wanted to support him and decided to marry him. Joseph is very kind and family-oriented. Despite being busy with work, he helps with household chores and childcare. I loved Joseph for that. On the contrary, I still consider my first marriage a failure. I met my ex-husband Matthew online. We matched around the time I turned 30 and married because we got along well. But after marrying, I realized Matthew and I had completely different hobbies and values. But it's too late for regrets. Still, in the beginning, both Matthew and I tried to meet each other halfway. The dark clouds over our marriage gathered about a year after getting married. It all started when my best friend visited our new home. This visit would plunge me into the depths of misfortune. Hey, can I come over to your place? That was Elizabeth, my best friend. She couldn't attend our wedding due to her schedule, so she wanted to celebrate at our house at a convenient time. Would it be okay to come over when your husband is also there? I want to say hello. I'd love that. Please come. Elizabeth was my best friend since high school. She was the first to speak to me when I entered. And despite everything, I loved her dearly. So, I readily accepted Elizabeth's request. Little did I know, this would lead to such a disaster. The following week, Elizabeth visited my new home with lots of gifts. Nice to meet you. I'm Elizabeth, Linda's best friend. Nice to meet you. My wife always talks about you. Elizabeth smiled and greeted Matthew. Then followed him into the living room. I walked behind them and headed straight for the kitchen. Oh, I'd like some tea. Ah, then I'll have the same. Matthew, usually a coffee person, opting for tea. From the kitchen, I sighed as I looked into the living room. Do you have tea? Asking me while still fixated on Elizabeth, Matthew didn't even look my way. Elizabeth has always been beautiful, and I understand why one might be captivated by her beauty. But it's another thing for a husband to be enthralled by another woman. Thinking this, I replied, No, we don't. You usually drink tea. Elizabeth, do you drink coffee? I can, but... Elizabeth looked at Matthew after saying that. I like Elizabeth, but honestly, I don't like that gesture of hers. Because whenever Elizabeth does that, most men end up doing whatever she wants. As a special treat, why don't you go buy some for her? Predictably, I sighed at those words. Elizabeth, looking a bit troubled, wouldn't say she'd settle for coffee. Reluctantly, I went to buy tea. After purchasing it at the nearest supermarket, I was walking back home. When my mobile phone rang. It was Matthew. Sorry, can you also pick up a cake on your way back? What? But... Matthew cut off the call without waiting for my reply. No matter how many times I called back, Matthew didn't answer. He must be too caught up in their conversation. With no choice, I stopped by the bakery before heading home. I'm home. Welcome back. When I entered the living room, the window was open. They were both in light clothing. Perhaps it was too warm. I thought they should just turn off the heating as I spoke up. Was it hot? Yeah, it was. You could have turned off the heating. Yeah, that's right. Should have done that. Matthew seemed somewhat flustered. There was nothing unusual in the living room, and Elizabeth was smiling at me. I felt something unpleasant but pretended not to notice and laid out the cake. Here you go, Elizabeth. Thank you. Elizabeth thanked me in a cheerful voice. Then, she chose a cake slice and began eating next to Matthew. Watching this irritated me. However, Elizabeth has always been a person who is close to others, so I thought it was pointless to say anything and tried not to think about it. Hey Linda, Matthew is really wonderful, isn't he? Do you think so? I replied bashfully to Elizabeth's comment. Then, with a beautiful smile, Elizabeth continued talking while resting her hand on Matthew's knee. Yes. He's really handsome and above all, a banker, right? That's impressive. Thank you. You're wonderful too, Elizabeth. Oh, that makes me happy. Matthew is a banker who had recently been promoted. When Elizabeth praised him for that, Matthew smiled very happily. Though there were supposed to be 3 of us, it quickly became just the 2 of them. Feeling out of place, I silently ate my cake and moved to the kitchen. Matthew, can I come over again? Yes, of course. Hey, Linda. Finally hearing my name, I looked up. That's when I noticed Elizabeth leaning against Matthew for the first time. Is it okay to come over, but maybe keep a bit of distance? Are you jealous, Linda? Don't be too clingy with Matthew, he's gonna run away. That's not what I meant. My response grew stern at Elizabeth's teasing, and Matthew frowned. Linda, that's rude to Elizabeth who came all the way here. Apologize. What? Apologize. Matthew had never raised his voice before. Surprised, I widened my eyes. Matthew, it's okay. I'm not angry, right, Linda? We're best friends after all. Sorry. Reluctantly apologizing, Elizabeth looked very pleased, and Matthew also looked at Elizabeth kindly beside her. Seeing this made me feel terrible. Elizabeth stayed for dinner that day and was glued to Matthew the entire time. And finally, she hugged Matthew before leaving. Elizabeth is beautiful, isn't she? Did you enjoy flirting with my best friend? What, are you jealous? No. After Elizabeth left, my stern expression made Matthew instantly sour. What? It's not jealousy, but envy. Just because Elizabeth is beautiful, that's not good. That's not it. Stop it. I'm going to bed. Take care of cleaning up. Saying that, Matthew immediately went to the bedroom. Left alone, I cleaned up while shedding tears. And from this day forward, Matthew's behavior started to become clearly strange. I don't need dinner today. What? Again? Got a problem with that? It's not that, but... Matthew began eating out about half of the week. He claimed he was busy with work, but judging by his cheerful demeanor, it seemed unlikely. I had a bad feeling, but tried not to think about it too much. Make sure to iron my shirts properly. Don't embarrass me. Okay. From the day Elizabeth visited, Matthew began to treat me arrogantly. It was incredibly sad and very painful. I once asked Matthew why he was acting like that. But Matthew just glared at me and didn't take me seriously. Don't worry about that and just hurry up with the housework. That was all he said, without offering to help anymore. I would send off Matthew, who was eager to go out on days he didn't need dinner at home, with a heavy heart. After continuing this life for a month, Elizabeth suddenly came to our house on a holiday. Linda, I have something I want to talk about. Elizabeth, I told you to wait, didn't I? But I have to. The conversation unfolded at the entrance, and I realized my bad premonition had become reality. "Since when?" Matthew answered awkwardly, almost mumbling. "Since the day Elizabeth came over." Hearing that, everything went dark before my eyes. Then Elizabeth spoke to me. "I thought it was wrong because he's your husband. But I've fallen in love with Matthew." Matthew consoled Elizabeth, who was on the verge of tears. Honestly, I had a hunch this would happen since the first time I introduced them to each other. But I just looked the other way. "Are you going to divorce me?" "I'm sorry, but I've fallen in love with Elizabeth. I'll pay the alimony, so please don't ask her for it." Matthew's words hit me like a blow to the head, igniting a surge of anger. "Why do you get to decide that? I'll demand compensation from both of you." "Fine. I'll pay for Elizabeth's share too." "Do as you please." Screaming at the sight of my beloved defending his affair, Elizabeth trembled. Matthew hugged her protectively. I felt like I was going mad. After that, I quickly divorced Matthew, received compensation from both, and moved. Hearing rumors that they got married immediately, I started a new life while drowning in sorrow. Fortunately, I found a job quickly. As I got used to work, I found a new boyfriend and gradually stopped thinking about Matthew and Elizabeth. My new boyfriend, Joseph, was a very kind person. Joseph had a divorce history and 2 children. Despite being busy with work, he was fully committed to parenting, and I fell deeply in love with him. Joseph loved me with all his heart. He introduced me to his children early on, and they got along well with me. After dating for about 3 years, we got married. I received a lot of blessings from those around us, retired to support him, and became a housewife. I spent very happy days, without ever remembering Matthew and the others, enjoying a smooth-sailing married life. However, trouble can strike unexpectedly. One afternoon, I received a call from an unusual person. It was Elizabeth, my best friend who had stolen Matthew from me 10 years ago. Reluctantly, I decided to answer the phone. Then, Elizabeth, with hardly any greetings, dropped a bombshell. "I had twins. I need an $18,000 baby shower gift, please." To think she dared ask that after stealing my happiness. Dark emotions welled up, but thanks to Joseph, who looked at me worriedly, I regained my senses. "That's right. I have Joseph now." Elizabeth, who kept pressing for a response while I remained silent. I replied to her with a bright voice. "Sure. I'll come with my husband, the bank president." "What?" I could hear Elizabeth's pathetic voice. I continued. "I've remarried. Why didn't you tell me?" "That's obvious, isn't it? I didn't want you to steal him too. We're best friends, aren't we?" Elizabeth screamed about being heartless, but I couldn't help laughing. And slowly, I replied to her words. "You were the one who betrayed first." At that, Elizabeth was at a loss for words. I unilaterally ended the call and explained the situation to Joseph beside me. And so, I decided to go ahead with my plan for revenge. I discussed the plan with Joseph. Originally, I had forgotten about the plan I made right after the divorce because my relationship with Joseph was so joyful. But if they were going to bring it up again, that's a different story. "Go all out, that's fine." "Yeah. Thank you." I nodded in gratitude. Then, I simulated the reunion with Elizabeth set for the next week over and over. And on the promised day, I headed to the address Elizabeth had given me and rang the doorbell. "Welcome. Are you Linda's husband?" "Yes, that's right." "I didn't know you got married again. You could have told me. That's rich coming from you, after what you did." Elizabeth's face clouded over for a moment at my words, but she still kept her smile and ushered us inside. The interior of the house, larger than the one Matthew and I had lived in, was scattered with branded clothes and bags here and there. All of them women's, so they must belong to Elizabeth. "You still like branded things, huh?" Oh, yeah. But actually, I prefer more modest things, you know?" Elizabeth answered, oddly directing her response to Joseph, although I was the one who asked. That reminded me of how she was with Matthew, and I felt an urge to shout right then. Joseph stopped me. Elizabeth, Linda asked you the question, not me. I don't particularly want to know. Ah, I see. Elizabeth's momentum was broken, and she looked foolish. Just seeing that made me feel better. Thank you. You're welcome, Joseph said with a smile, reassuring me he's my greatest ally. Then, entering the living room, we found Matthew lounging, who looked up in surprise at seeing me. Linda, why are you here? Why? Because Elizabeth invited us. Huh? Elizabeth, why did you invite her? Matthew looked confused and even more so when he saw who was behind me. The president. Why with Linda? We're married. He's my husband. You got married again? Matthew kept looking back and forth between me and Joseph, perplexed. Joseph's brows furrowed at Matthew's rude behavior. Do you have a problem with my wife? No, not at all. Matthew straightened up as he answered, looking pathetic. Elizabeth seemed to think the same, sighing dramatically. But that wasn't the end of it with Elizabeth. Nice to meet you, Linda's husband. I'm Elizabeth, Linda's best friend. Elizabeth leaned towards Joseph as she said this, but he avoided her. However, Elizabeth didn't give up. You're handsome. What's your name? I have no intention of telling you. Ah, that's cold. Come on, it's okay, right? Elizabeth reached out and touched his arm. In an instant, he knocked her hand away. Ouch! What are you doing to my wife? Matthew glared at Joseph in response to Elizabeth's small cry. Then, Joseph, looking utterly exasperated, turned to Matthew. Your wife was the one who suddenly touched me. Yeah, but don't you feel sorry for Elizabeth? Not really. Rather, I think someone who's married yet touches other men so easily should reflect on their frivolity. Elizabeth turned red with Joseph's words. Apparently very offended, she glared at Joseph. Then I spoke up. Elizabeth, trying to take someone else's man again, huh? What? Did you think I hadn't noticed? I pulled out a photo from my bag and scattered it around. The photo showed many men. Elizabeth's face turned pale at the sight. What's this? These are photos of Elizabeth's ex-boyfriends. Well, Elizabeth is beautiful, after all. Yes, but that doesn't give her the right to repeatedly steal others' partners. Matthew also turned pale, recognizing the situation, but then he picked up a photo as if something caught his eye. Hey, is this a recent photo? Yes, that was just taken yesterday. Upon hearing that, Matthew glared at Elizabeth and thrust the photo at her. The photo showed Elizabeth walking arm in arm with a young man. Why do you have this? Hey! Weren't you supposed to be staying at your mom's house because she was sick yesterday? Matthew raised his voice. Elizabeth tried to make excuses, but it was clear Matthew wasn't buying any of it. We're getting a divorce. I'm done with you. Why does it have to come to this? As the two began to argue, I intervened. The conversation isn't over yet. I showed them another photo, causing Matthew's face to turn pale. What is this? This shows you, doesn't it? Matthew frantically shook his head at Joseph's words. But the photo clearly captured Matthew's face. With incontrovertible evidence before him, Matthew slumped down, defeated. Please, anything but dismissal. I can't just overlook someone who has embezzled money. But, indeed, Matthew had been skimming funds from the bank. We discovered this soon after starting our preparations. Joseph had hired a detective, and it came to light. Matthew's department had been having frequent discrepancies in their accounts, and Joseph, hearing rumors of Matthew's lavish lifestyle, became suspicious. As a banker, not only did you hurt and discard my wife, but you also tarnished the bank's reputation. You're disqualified. I'm sorry, I just needed the money. I'll return it. If that were enough, we wouldn't need the police. At Joseph's words, Matthew fell to his knees, disheartened. Elizabeth looked down on Matthew as if he were trash. You said your salary had increased recently, but that was a lie. It's because you're always splurging on brand name goods. It's your fault for not bringing home a bigger salary as a banker. You're the worst. How dare you? You bitch! Matthew glared at Elizabeth, who seemed to think she was in a superior position and was unfazed by it. I handed Elizabeth a document. People in debt shouldn't be talking like that. Where did you get that? You didn't borrow from a reputable source, so the interest has ballooned. Tough times ahead for you. I said this to Elizabeth before making a call. After finishing the call, I turned back to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, you've always been popular, right? So what if I was? But did you know, behind your back, people actually disliked you? Elizabeth looked at me, not understanding. Indeed, Elizabeth had been quite unpopular during our school days. Despite her attractive appearance, which naturally made her popular with boys, her bad attitude and habit of stealing others' boyfriends made her resented by the girls. As I explained this, Elizabeth, seemingly unaware, trembled. You say you've been popular, but really, you were just disliked and kept at a distance. That's a lie. As proof, nobody invited you to their weddings. Elizabeth seemed to realize something at my words. I had thought of her as a friend and invited her to my wedding, thinking she wouldn't make a move on my partner. Elizabeth couldn't attend my wedding due to her circumstances, but if she had, I might have been criticized by my other friends. The thought made me shudder now. However, Elizabeth seemed too preoccupied to notice my reaction. That's a lie. I was popular and beautiful. Elizabeth muttered quietly, sounding frankly eerie. After a while, she looked at Joseph and tried to lean on him. Hey, Joseph, I'm beautiful, right? Joseph silently avoided her. Infuriated by his reaction, Elizabeth reached out and grabbed him. Why are you avoiding me? Because it was disgusting. Disgusting? Yes, you're like a witch. Elizabeth lost all composure and began to flail about, her hair flying. Seeing this, I thought Joseph's words were quite apt. Joseph continued firmly. My wife is more beautiful than you. I will never be swayed by you. More beautiful than me? Impossible. No, it's a fact. In terms of both beauty and purity of heart, my wife is the best. Tears welled up in my eyes at Joseph's words. However, Elizabeth was infuriated at being told I was more beautiful. More beautiful than me? Are you blind? If anyone is at fault here, it's your brain. What? Joseph continued to provoke her, and Elizabeth grew increasingly angry. As this back and forth went on, the doorbell rang. Seeing the visitor, Elizabeth turned deathly pale. No! No way! Well, then good luck with your debt repayment. I don't want to. As Elizabeth screamed, the front door opened, and intimidating figures entered. They took Elizabeth away, flanked by them, somewhat forcibly. Matthew watched, trembling, making no move to help his wife. Watching him, I realized how right I was to have divorced him back then. Thank you for falling for Elizabeth. It seems my thoughts showed on my face. Because Matthew glared at me. What's so funny? What? Nothing. Just thinking this is what self-inflicted means. If you hadn't been here, I could have been happy. No, that wouldn't happen. Both of you have too much debt. Unable to argue, Matthew gritted his teeth in frustration. I handed him a thick envelope with a smile. What's this? Congratulations on your baby. The $18,000 Elizabeth asked for. Aren't you going to show me the kids? The kids are at my parents' today. $18,000. Yeah, that means you want the compensation money back, right? Indeed. The $18,000 was the exact amount of compensation Matthew and Elizabeth had paid me. With the debts piling up, Elizabeth probably intended to use it to pay off her debts. The reason she left the children at Matthew's parents' was that she never intended to show us the kids in the first place. I then dropped another bombshell. Well, it would be good if those kids really are yours. What do you mean? Oh. Realizing what I meant, Matthew's face turned pale. If Elizabeth had been seeing her affair partner before getting pregnant, there was a high possibility he was the father. Matthew seemed to have realized this. But Elizabeth said they look like me. She would say that, wouldn't she? To keep it hidden. All your words could be lies too. Huh? I'm not so idle to lie. If Elizabeth hadn't called me, I wouldn't have bothered with this ever again. As I kept cutting off Matthew's words, his momentum faded. I pressed further by handing him a document. What's this? Old test results. Test results? Yes. I had the hospital issue them again. The documents I produced were from a gynecological examination Matthew had undergone while we were married. It was written there. It said natural conception would be difficult, so when I heard about the twins, I remembered this. Matthew was stunned looking at the test results. I had intended to tell him the results after the examination, but Elizabeth came over the day before I could. Those kids aren't mine. It's highly likely. Why now? Is this revenge? Matthew's obvious question was met with my smile. Then Joseph spoke up. You're to be confined to your house from tomorrow. We'll send further notice. Don't expect to avoid dismissal. Please wait. Anything but dismissal. Still pleading, even now. Joseph responded with a cold gaze, before making a phone call. Hearing the name of the person on the phone, Matthew lost all color. I've instructed them to thoroughly investigate you. Matthew slumped down, pale, and whispered, It's all over. Yes, your career as a banker is over. Not just as a banker, but with debts piling up, his life seemed over too. That must be something Matthew understood best. Lacking the energy to glare at me, Matthew began to apologize to Joseph, hands on the ground. I'm truly sorry. Please, anything but dismissal. That's impossible, as I've said. Bluntly rejected by Joseph, Matthew then turned to me. Is he that desperate to remain a banker? I was somewhat impressed. Matthew apologized to me while making a bold request. Linda, I'm truly sorry. Can you forgive me now? Because you think if I forgive you, you'll escape dismissal? That's part of it. Matthew's confirmation was met with my sigh. Then I stated clearly, even if I forgive you, it won't erase the fact of embezzlement. Besides, my husband doesn't mix personal feelings with business. But Matthew wore an expression of despair. Then, leaving behind Matthew, who became silent, Joseph and I left the scene. Later, I heard that Elizabeth sent over divorce papers. Matthew signed them and seemed to have given up custody too. The twins Elizabeth bore were indeed the children of the man she had an affair with, and I heard they became the talk of the bank. I received an apology from Matthew's parents. They had been distant during the marriage, but it seems they were just watching from afar. I heard Matthew is now holed up in his room at his parents' house. As Joseph declared, the bank fired him. Life seems to be very tough, with demands for the return of embezzled funds on top of debts. He is reportedly working multiple jobs day and night, surviving on sprouts every day to fend off hunger. He once came to visit in shabby clothes, but was stopped by security before he could even reach the entrance. I might be heartless for not feeling pity for Matthew's downfall. But, upon reflection, it seems only natural considering everything he did. Elizabeth's parents were acquaintances from before, so they were shocked when I told them the truth. It seems they didn't know she was meeting Matthew based on lies, nor that he was my ex-husband. They apologized many times, making me feel sorry. They offered to pay for the trouble caused, but I declined since Elizabeth's parents were not to blame. Elizabeth was taken away by debt collectors, and her whereabouts are unknown. Since a letter arrived from somewhere near the sea once, she might still be alive. The twins were being raised by Elizabeth's parents, but being elderly, They couldn't keep up and recently placed them in a facility. It might seem sad, but it's probably better than growing up beside Elizabeth. I've come to realize just how much I've come to dislike Elizabeth. Joseph is working hard as a bank president, and his work keeps him late. But he keeps in touch, so I'm not worried about infidelity at all. Meeting such a gentleman has made me happy, and thinking back, the difficult divorce seems like it was meant to bring me to him, which is strangely gratifying. He recently hired a new secretary and wants to host a home party. Watching him prepare the barbecue gear makes me feel very happy. Lately, I've been into taking day trips with the kids. It's mostly nearby, but it's refreshing and fun. Joseph wants to join, but he's too busy now, so I'm enjoying the time with just the three of us. The older one is already a teenager, but still calls me mom and shows affection. The younger one hugs me and says he loves me, making every day very happy. And now, a new life is growing inside me. Despite the high risk of being a first-time mother at 45, I want to carefully raise this precious life we've been blessed with. The kids are looking forward to having a much younger sibling, so we plan to decide on the baby's name as a family of 4. We're not marrying her off if it's a girl. You're getting ahead of yourself. Let's not find out the gender until the birth. We accepted Joseph's suggestion, so we still don't know whether we'll have a boy or a girl. Thanks to that, we spend every day imagining our future with either a son or a daughter. There were hard times, but my current happiness overwrites them, making me very happy now. I feel like the rest of my life will surely be bright. That's what I thought as I gently stroked my belly. Stop it! Grandma, help! Outside the front door, I heard Madison calling for help. I hurriedly turned off the stove and rushed to the front door. What are you doing there? It was Sabrina, the daughter-in-law who had abandoned her child 3 years ago, trying to forcefully push Madison into a car by grabbing his arm. Madison bit Sabrina's hand, and while she flinched, he ran to my side. Madison, why would you do something so awful? I am your mother. What kind of mother are you? Anger towards Sabrina exploded inside me. If you were really a mother, you wouldn't leave your child behind. You are not fit to be a mother. And now you show up trying to take my son away. What face are you putting on? You, a stranger, have no right to interfere with our happiness. You're quite presumptuous, aren't you? Then what about Madison's feelings? Have you even thought about the child for a second in these 3 years? The issue is Madison's will. It's up to Madison whether he wants to continue living with us or choose you. That's for Madison to decide. Madison, of course, you want to live with me, your mother. Who else bore you with such pain? It's obvious who's in front of you. So, the answer should be clear. You can be honest with your feelings. You don't have to mind anyone. If it's your decision, I won't say anything anymore. Believing that Madison would choose me, I dared to say such things. Then Madison, pointing at Sabrina, said, I want to live with Mom. How can this be? I was at a loss for words, never expecting Madison to choose his mother who had abandoned him. My name is Lila, I'm 63. When our eldest son, Morton, got married, my husband and I started living with Morton and his wife. Madison was not Morton's child, but Sabrina's child from a previous marriage, yet we cherished him as our own grandchild. With his charming and affectionate smile, Madison would call us Grandma, Grandpa, and we would smile back, feeling the urge to buy him anything he wanted. Seeing this, Morton would chuckle and advise, Don't spoil the child too much just because he's cute. And we would laugh like children caught in mischief. Madison is so dear to us, it wouldn't hurt if he was in our eyes. That was our couple's catchphrase. Then one day, Morton came home downcast, having failed his company's annual health checkup.
You seem very down. Did the doctor say something?
I asked, worried about Morton's gloomy demeanor, and he looked up saying, I need a re-examination. It might be worse than I imagined, but there could be a mistake.
Yeah, who can rely on what doctors say?
I tried to keep our spirits up, but the re-examination revealed a harsh reality. The family was called to the hospital, and the doctor told us, it's terminal cancer, stage 4. It took me a moment to comprehend the doctor's words. This man just got married to the woman he loves, about to start a happy life, and this happens. It's absurd. Venting my anger at the doctor wouldn't change the outcome, but I was at a loss for where to direct my feelings, and the doctor silently took it in.
Grandma, don't cry. Dad will be all right.
Madison rubbed my back. His brave attitude further stirred my emotions, and I couldn't stop my tears. Ever since Madison came to our home, he had grown quite fond of Morton as a father. Madison, holding back his tears, stayed close to me. When Morton's emergency hospitalization was decided, I went back home to get his clothes and toiletries.
Wait, where's Sabrina?
I realized I hadn't seen my daughter-in-law Sabrina anywhere. I searched the house, called her mobile phone several times, but got no response.
Really? Where could she be when her husband is in such a condition?
I was frustrated, and Sabrina rarely visited Morton's hospital room thereafter. Morton.
Dad!
Morton passed away unexpectedly in less than a month, and both Madison and I cried our hearts out. Perhaps due to his youth, the cancer cells spread quickly. Morton left us for heaven at the young age of 39, leaving his parents behind.
At a time like this, where is Sabrina?
Reynold, next to us breaking down in tears, vented his anger towards Sabrina. Sabrina hadn't shown her face in the hospital room even once during this time. Afterwards, the funeral was hastily arranged, and we were too busy dealing with relatives and condolence visitors to immerse ourselves in grief. Madison, though young, diligently entertained the guests who came. Seeing this, the relatives, with tears in their eyes, murmured, How brave he is. Despite being so young, Madison is so admirable. Hearing this, the sorrow I had been holding back surged forth again. In contrast, as for Sabrina.
At a time like this, what is Sabrina doing?
A while ago, she took a taxi somewhere. A relative who had seen Sabrina reported to us. We were dumbfounded by Sabrina's attitude, hardly befitting a wife. And before the wound of Morton's death could heal, Sabrina left us with nothing but a note saying,
Thank you for everything. Please take good care of Madison from now on. Mom's not here?
Madison, waking up to that reality in the morning, couldn't grasp the fact that his mother had abandoned him and started crying.
How could a mother be so terrible?
Reynold, veins throbbing at his temples, yelled loudly. Madison has no blood relation to us. He is Morton's stepchild, son of Sabrina. Now that Morton is gone and Sabrina has left the house, Madison has become a complete stranger to us.
Madison, what shall we do now?
What else can we do? We'll have to ask relatives to take him in. Reynolds said it in a somewhat cold manner, but upon reflection, that was the realistic choice. However, as far as we knew, the only relative of Sabrina's was her mother, who must be quite old now and living in a retirement home. It's impossible to ask such a person to take care of a grandchild.
That's true.
We were at a loss, racking our brains over what to do. That evening, Madison had not returned from school. Normally, he would have already been home, eating the snacks I prepared. Worried, I called the school, and the teacher told me that Madison had left at his usual time. Even after calling friends and likely guardians. I don't know. was all the response I got.
I'm going to look outside.
I dashed out and found a child's shadow swinging on a swing in a park a little away from our home.
Madison!
As I rushed towards him, Madison stood up and started running in the opposite direction.
Wait, Madison! Why are you running away?
Madison stopped and turned around.
Grandma and Grandpa are strangers to me, right? So I shouldn't stay in that house anymore. What silly thing are you saying? Neither Grandpa nor I have ever thought of you as a stranger.
Madison stood frozen, tears streaming down his face.
Come back. You are an important part of our family. Is it really okay? Even if I stay in that house? If Morton died and then Madison went somewhere too, we would be lonely. Please, will you always stay with us?
Madison wiped his tears with the back of his hand.
Okay. I'll live with you, Grandma.
He ran towards me and hugged me tightly. Thus, Madison continued to live with us as before. 3 years have passed, and Madison turned 11.
Today, we played baseball in gym class. Guess what? I hit a home run. Isn't that amazing? That's amazing. Maybe you will be a baseball player in the future?
I don't know about that. I want to do well in my studies too, so being a sports player is probably not for me. Madison tells me everything that happens at school when he comes home. When I bake pancakes and feed them to a hungry Madison.
Grandma's pancakes are the best in the world.
Although he didn't have a mother, Madison was growing up well in a warm and leisurely environment. One day, I received a call from a fellow guardian.
There's a suspicious woman asking around about Madison. A suspicious woman? What kind of woman?
Piecing together the witness information, it seemed that the woman bore a resemblance to Sabrina. Leaving behind a child one has given birth to, no matter the circumstances, is something I cannot comprehend. And now, what face does she have, coming to inquire after all this time? Regardless, we were vigilant every day against the possibility of Sabrina attempting to take Madison back. And then, that day came unexpectedly. As the time approached for Madison to come home, I started baking his favorite pancakes. Soon, the doorbell should ring, and I would hear Madison's voice filled with energy saying,
"I'm home."
With that expectation, I concentrated my ears outside, when suddenly,
"Stop it! Grandma, help!"
I heard Madison's voice calling for help from outside the front door. I hurriedly turned off the stove and rushed to the front door.
"What are you doing there?"
It was Sabrina, trying to forcefully push Madison into a car by grabbing his arm. Madison bit Sabrina's hand, and while she flinched, he ran to my side.
"Madison, why would you do something so awful? I am your mother. What kind of mother are you?"
Anger towards Sabrina exploded inside me.
"If you were really a mother, you wouldn't leave your child behind. You are not fit to be a mother. And now you show up trying to take my son away. What face are you putting on?" "What face, you ask?" "This face. I am undoubtedly Madison's mother. You, a stranger, have no right to tell me anything."
When I told Madison,
"Go inside the house,"
Sabrina also tried to enter the house.
"Wait a minute. Who said you could come in? Outsiders, please leave. I have no intention of giving him back to a mother like you now. You, a stranger, have no right to interfere with our happiness." "Our happiness? What do you mean by that?" "I have someone I love now. His parents are finally about to accept our marriage. Of course, they have accepted Madison too. This is my chance to be happy." "You're quite presumptuous, aren't you? Then what about Madison's feelings? Have you even thought about him for a second in these 3 years?
Sabrina, frustrated, scratched her hair violently.
I've waited 3 years. Just a little more and I'll be happy. You have no blood relation to Madison, you're just a stranger. Why do you have the right to stop our happiness?
I was caught off guard by Sabrina's statement.
Wait a minute. You said you've waited 3 years, right now?
So what?
3 years ago, that's when Morton was still fighting his illness.
Sabrina made a displeased face and said,
Damn it.
But then she brazenly continued.
So what? What does that have to do with now?
It has everything to do with it.
You were fooling around with another man even while your husband was suffering from illness, hardly ever visiting him. And you dare call yourself Madison's mother? The real bore was him. Getting sick and dying so easily after marrying me. I prefer younger and healthier men.
Forgetting her own infidelity, Sabrina not only disparaged me but also spoke ill of Morton, who had passed away.
Truly appalling. Anyway, I have absolutely no intention of handing Madison over to someone like you.
Then Sabrina let out a loud laugh that echoed throughout the neighborhood.
Are you sure you can say that? What do you mean? You are now separating a child from his biological parent, me. Isn't that a serious crime? A crime? Why would I be committing a crime?
If you have a complaint, why not call the police right now? Who do you think the police will believe?
By the way, my current fiancé, Trace, as well as his parents, always say you are a terrible mother-in-law.
It seems Sabrina is spreading the word that I'm a bad mother-in-law for stubbornly taking Madison away from his biological mother. The moment I learned this fact, a mix of anger and sadness wrestled within me, and I felt an urge to cry. Crying is useless.
Madison is my real child, born of my own flesh. You, a stranger, have no right to interfere from the beginning.
Honestly, I felt an impulse to slap Sabrina right there, but I knew that wouldn't solve anything. The issue is the child's will.
Whether Madison chooses to continue living with us or decides to live with you, his mother, is up to him.
That's true.
Let's do that. Then call Madison, please.
I was confident Madison would choose to stay with us. As always, I would never hand him over to a mother like Sabrina. Madison would never make such a wrong choice. When called, Madison reappeared at the entrance.
Madison.
You heard the conversation, right? What do you think? This is about your life, so you decide. I looked into Madison's eyes.
Madison. Of course, you want to live with me, your mother. Who else bore you with such pain? It's obvious who's in front of you. So, the answer should be clear.
You can be honest with your feelings. You don't have to mind anyone. If it's your decision, I won't say anything anymore. I said this, believing Madison would choose me. Then, Madison, pointing at Sabrina, said,
I want to live with Mom.
How can this be? I was speechless, never expecting Madison to choose his mother who had abandoned him.
Just like my son. Rather than living with an unrelated old person, he wants to live with a young and beautiful mom. Really? Is that really okay for you, Madison? Do you seriously want to live with such a mother?
Madison looked at me with a firm gaze.
I've decided for myself. I've chosen to go with Mom.
It felt as though darkness enveloped me. But it's not my place to interfere in the choice Madison himself made. I had to abide by the decision already made. All right. It's Madison's life. Do as you wish. I knelt down and hugged my not blood-related grandson as tightly as I could.
Madison, when did you grow up so much? Even when you go to your new home, make sure to stay healthy. Don't catch a cold.
Then, forcing down my feelings, I'm now a stranger to you. You don't have to remember me, I whispered in Madison's ear with a voice trembling with tears.
I won't forget. I'll never forget, Grandma.
Madison whispered back, audible only to me. Madison silently got into the back seat of the car. Through tear-blurred eyes, I watched Sabrina's car disappear from view. Madison, now far removed from us, seemed to be fighting his own battles, unknown to me. Madison was warmly welcomed into Trace's home.
Madison. Finally, we meet. I've been looking forward to meeting you for a long time.
Sabrina's new fiancé, Trace, 3 years her senior, was a businessman known as a beloved and respected young man. Even when Madison first arrived, Trace made an effort to make him feel at ease in the unfamiliar surroundings by engaging in various conversations. Trace's parents were also looking forward to meeting their new family member, especially his mother, who had risen early to prepare meals. When Madison stepped into the house, a feast laid out on a large platter awaited him on the table, presumably arranged by Sabrina.
Weren't you able to eat good food at their house? Now that you're here, you don't have to worry anymore. You can always eat delicious meals to your heart's content.
Trace said this and winked at Madison. Madison remained silent, not showing a smile.
What's the matter, I wonder? Maybe he's just a bit nervous meeting his new family.
Sabrina said with a forced smile, but Madison glared at her. You don't have to be scared. After all, those people are strangers with no relation to you.
Don't worry. If those people try to take you back, we'll call the police and have them protect you.
Trace and his parents seemed genuinely concerned for Madison.
Madison, why have you been so quiet? Trace is welcoming you. He's going to be your new dad.
Madison continued to glare at Sabrina. Finally, Sabrina, frustrated, snapped.
Enough already. If you have something to say it clearly.
Frustrated, snapped. Then Madison took a deep breath as if waiting for this moment.
I'm grateful to Trace and his family for welcoming me warmly. However, I never want to be involved with you again. What?
Sabrina was stunned, unable to comprehend what Madison had just said, her mouth agape.
Madison, what do you mean by that? Saying you never want to be involved with Mom again?
Trace asked calmly on Sabrina's behalf.
I still consider Grandma and Grandpa my real family. What are you saying? Those people are the bad ones who took you away from me. Don't say such ridiculous things. Madison, you're a kind child, maybe feeling guilty for leaving them. But you don't need to protect those people anymore.
Trace looked at Madison with a shaken gaze. But Madison was resolute.
I'm not being considerate towards Grandma and Grandpa. I just don't want to think of someone who cheated and then suddenly abandoned me as my mother. Wait, Madison. What are you suddenly saying?
Sabrina laughed it off, clearly shaken. Madison continued.
I can't stand it anymore, being abandoned by Mom who now claims to be my mother. I refuse to call such a person Mom for the rest of my life.
Trace's parents, who had been silently listening, looked skeptically at Sabrina.
Madison, is it true that Mom cheated and abandoned you?
Trace's father asked with a stern face, and Madison nodded with conviction.
That's a lie, obviously.
Sabrina hurriedly denied it.
When I was kicked out, this child was only 8 years old. An 8-year-old couldn't possibly understand the real situation. He must have been fed lies.
Saying so, Sabrina broke down crying. Maybe Madison was too young to know the truth. Trace's mother, with tears in her eyes, showed understanding towards Sabrina's argument.
Those people are truly terrible. Brainwashing such an innocent child to their advantage, it's unforgivable,
Trace asserted strongly. Then Madison pulled out a mobile phone from his bag and began to play videos documenting his interactions with us. The video showed us giving Madison presents on his birthday, Madison's joyous reaction. At Madison's sports day, Reynolds, without regard for others' stares, pushed through other parents to cheer. On days off from school, Madison eating the lunch I made happily during fishing trips with Reynolds, filled with countless happy smiles.
How is this brainwashing? This is just a normal relationship between grandparents and their grandchild.
Trace expressed his honest thoughts after watching the video. And at the end of the video, it recorded the scene where Sabrina came to Lila's house to take Madison back.
Stop it! Grandma, help!
Sabrina is seen trying to forcefully take Madison into her car. Then there's a heated argument between me and Sabrina, where in a moment of heightened emotions, Sabrina admits to having neglected her sick husband to have an affair with Trace. Wait a minute. 3 years ago, that's when I met you, Sabrina.
You said you were already on bad terms with your husband and close to a divorce, didn't you?
Trace, noticing the contradiction between what Sabrina had told him and what was now being shown in Madison's mobile phone video, glared at Sabrina. Not just Trace, but his parents also began to harbor doubts about Sabrina's words. Sabrina's face turned pale, and she snatched the mobile phone from Madison's hand.
I'll take care of this.
She ran towards the entrance and smashed it on the ground. The mobile phone made a lifeless sound as it broke easily, and the video stopped.
This must be a trap set up by Lila. She anticipated that someday I would take Madison back, so she prepared these staged videos in advance. That must be it.
It's useless, you know. Madison retorted in a calm tone.
Hey Mom, have you heard of the cloud? Nowadays, even if the mobile phone itself is destroyed, the data recorded on it is saved online.
Looking up at his mother with eyes red from crying.
So, no matter how much you destroy the mobile phone, the data inconvenient for you remains out of your reach.
Not just the video I showed now.
There are plenty of memories with Grandma and Grandpa saved.
Everything you're doing is pointless.
Sabrina. It seems there's no lie in what Madison is saying. We've been deceived by your lies for 3 years.
Trace's father said with furrowed brows.
Don't be fooled. That's all lies. Trace, say something.
Sabrina pleaded for help from her fiancé, but Trace, avoiding her gaze, said, I can't believe you anymore.
I want an explanation that makes sense to both my parents and me.
Sabrina had nothing to say and just knelt on the ground, slumping down.
Well, I had no idea such things were happening behind my back.
I later heard about this unfolding at Trace's house directly from Trace himself. When Trace brought Madison back, I'm truly sorry for what happened, even though I didn't know. He apologized deeply. We were surprised and responded, Please, don't be so formal. According to Trace, he had been told that the relationship with her husband had already broken down 3 years ago and that divorce was imminent. However, Lila and her husband refused to let go of Madison despite having no blood relation. And Sabrina had been fabricating lies about them, causing Madison daily distress. We were deceived by Sabrina, thinking you were terrible people. Then, the moment it was revealed all Sabrina's statements were false, Trace and his parents' sympathy turned into intense disgust.
Sabrina has completely exhausted our patience. The engagement is naturally off.
Trace said firmly and even mentioned seeking compensation for being continuously deceived. Sabrina, exposed for her lies and ejected from Trace's home right before their marriage, came begging to our house.
I'm in a lot of debt. Please help me. We were once family, after all. I was the woman your son loved. You could at least help me a little.
Despite her convenient reasoning, I did not open the door to welcome her. Then, driven by some thought, she repeatedly rammed against the closed door and eventually smashed several potted plants on the ground.
Why can you only think of such foolish actions?
Sabrina was screaming and causing a commotion, but soon, the noise attracted the attention of nearby residents, who seemed to have called the police. The police officers who arrived took Sabrina away. Even as she was being put into the police car, Sabrina was yelling something, but I couldn't hear her. What happened to Sabrina afterwards, we don't know, and now it doesn't matter to us. Since the incident with Sabrina, Trace has visited our house several times to help Madison with his studies.
Madison is really smart, and it's fun to teach him because he learns so quickly.
On his days off, Trace is in the garden playing catch with Madison. If Morton were alive, I'm sure it would have been like this. In my eyes, Trace and Morton's figures overlapped.
Grandma, thank you for everything.
Madison had secretly been saving his allowance and bought carnations and an apron for me on Mother's Day.
That's something you're supposed to give to your mom,
I said bashfully as I received the flowers. For me, Grandma, you're like a mom. Hearing this, Reynolds, spurred by a sense of rivalry, said,
Then I'm looking forward to Father's Day.
I'll give you a shoulder massage, Grandpa. I love you because you always take me out to play. Madison, back in our home, has become even more filial to us than before.
I'm going to become a doctor in the future. I'll become a doctor and make sure Grandma and Grandpa live a long life.
With his eyes, clear and devoid of any impurities, sparkling, Madison declared,
Look, that's my friend's dad.
This happened when I attended my beloved niece Gloria's Parents' Day. I was shocked to see a couple walking into the classroom. Because the man, cozying up to a woman I didn't recognize, was my own husband, Mike. After talking to Gloria, everything clicked for me. So, that's what it was all about. I'll never forgive this. As Mike was about to leave the classroom, I blocked his way, putting on a smile. Let's continue to get along as families, shall we? Please, stay with us until the end to see the turmoil that unfolds from here. My name is Emily, I'm 33 years old, and we're a dual-income couple in our 5th year of marriage. My husband's name is Mike. We met in a sort of half-set-up situation. My parents, who I met later in life, became good friends with Mike's parents, and we first met at a family dinner we were all invited to. Mike made the first move, and that's how our dating began. After a year and a half of dating, when we decided to marry, both sets of parents were thrilled. Everyone around us congratulated us, saying we were a perfect match. At that time, my close sister Flora also attended from afar, bringing along her then 1-year-old daughter Gloria, and I remember feeling so happy. 5 years later, I was still living with Mike, busy with work. Mike would say he's busy with work, coming home late on weekdays, and increasingly, his precious weekends were spent working. With Mike off and away, I found myself spending more time alone. I wish we had kids. That thought crossed my mind, and I shook it off. Actually, not long after we got married, Mike dropped a bombshell on me. I, actually, can't have children. The hospital test results he showed me clearly stated that. Since when did you know? I knew before we got married. But I thought if I told you, you might not marry me. Please, Emily, I don't want our parents to know about this. Keep it a secret. Mike had always said he loved kids and wanted a daughter someday. Knowing that, I felt deeply sorry for him at that moment. We'll take care of each other instead of having kids. Let's live our lives together." With those words from Mike, I nodded and resigned myself to giving up on the idea of having children. Now, 5 years later, did Mike keep his word? No, he didn't. Saying he's busy and tired, leaving all the household chores to me despite being a dual-income couple, without ever showing appreciation, his attitude towards me turned increasingly cold. One day, I got a call from Flora. She had moved abroad with her husband right after our wedding, but now that his assignment was over, they were moving back, not too far from us. Gloria was now 6 years old. I had seen her in photos, but this would be our first real interaction since the wedding. I was looking forward to meeting Flora and Gloria again. That night, I tried to tell Mike, who came home late, about Flora's return. "Welcome back, Mike. You know, I got a call from Flora today. I'm tired. I don't have time for small talk." Mike looked down at me coldly and quickly went to the bathroom. Left alone, I stood there, feeling lonely. Despite his aloof attitude towards me, Mike left all the troublesome matters for me to handle. "Hey, we're going to have a birthday party for Mom. Dad asked me to prepare, so you take care of it." I was left puzzled when he unilaterally said that, but I went ahead and prepared for my mother-in-law, Helen's birthday party, squeezing it into my busy schedule. On the day of the birthday party, Mike, who attended, wore a proud smile as he saw Helen's joy. "This birthday party, I set it all up. All for my dear Mom. Dad, I did good, right?" Despite the fact that he had dumped everything on me, Mike had the audacity to claim the credit, which irked me a bit. However, after the birthday party was over, my father-in-law Nicholas and Helen thanked me. "We know it was Emily who prepared everything. Thanks for doing this for Helen. Please continue to take good care of Mike." They were as kind to me as they had been since the day we got married. Despite my growing grievances with Mike, I was grateful for having met Nicholas and Helen. Sometime later, Mike's arrogant behavior only escalated. He wouldn't have a proper conversation with me, yet he always found something to complain about regarding the housework. One morning, an incident occurred. "Hey, Emily! What were you thinking?" Mike yelled at me, his face contorted with anger as I was getting ready to leave for work. "What's wrong with you all of a sudden? You didn't polish my shoes. How am I supposed to go to work like this?" Indeed, Mike had come home after I had gone to bed the previous night, so I hadn't polished his shoes. But, fed up with the mounting stress, I retorted, "They're your shoes. Why don't you take care of them yourself? Stop expecting me to do everything." In the next moment, I felt a sharp pain on my cheek. It took a second to realize Mike had slapped me. "Mike, did you just hit me?" "Shut up. There's nothing wrong with disciplining my wife. If you don't want this to happen, do your job as a wife properly." With that, Mike stormed out of the house. I was left clutching my cheek, collapsing onto the floor. He's hardly home, acts cold, and now violence. This is too much. That's when I began to question the meaning of my marriage to Mike. Yet, considering how happy our parents were when we married, and how kind Nicholas and Helen have been to me, I couldn't easily decide to divorce. One day, not long after she had returned from abroad, Flora asked, "Would you come to my daughter's Parents' Day?" Only 2 family members could attend, and Flora's husband couldn't make it because of work. I happily agreed, saying, "I'll be there." On the day of the Parents' Day, I went with Flora to Gloria's classroom. We waved back at Gloria, who was happily waving at us. Soon, the lesson started, and I watched from the back corner of the classroom. Then, a couple entered the classroom late. I was shocked when I glanced at them, because the dad was unmistakably Mike. He was there with a blonde woman, dressed flamboyantly, whispering and looking cozy as they started watching the class. I told Flora, and both of us, surprised, tried to stay out of sight from Mike for the time being. At that moment, I discreetly sent a message to someone. As the Parents' Day came to a close, the children started making their way over to their parents. Gloria ran over to Flora, and I bent down to ask her. Do you know that man over there?
That's Irene's dad. I saw his picture at their house when we went over to play.
Gloria had been abroad for so long that she didn't remember Mike's face since the wedding when she was 1. At that moment, I understood everything. So that's what it was. I will never forgive this. As Mike, the woman, and a child named Irene were about to leave the classroom, I blocked their path, forcing a smile in front of the child.
Hello. I hear Gloria has been getting along well with you. Thank you for that.
Mike looked at me, his face freezing over. The woman casually replied, Hello.
Since the kids get along so well, let's all continue to be friendly, shall we? Family style.
Huh. Beside the puzzled woman, Mike started to tremble. Then Flora said, Since the two want to play together, we'll take Irene with us. And quickly whispered something to me as she was leaving. As Flora and the children walked away, it left me, Mike, and the woman. Come on, Mike, let's go. Johanna said. Yes, excuse us. Mike responded, trying to act like a stranger. I grabbed Mike's arm with a smile, still.
Huh? What are you doing with my husband? And who are you?
I then introduced myself with a serious face. Sorry for the late introduction. I'm Emily. His wife, you know? The woman's face turned pale as she realized the situation. They tried to dash away. But having been in track and field during my school days, I easily caught up and stopped them. At the school gate, Mike gasped.
What? Dad, Mom too.
Yes, the person I emailed during Parents' Day was Nicholas. I had sent him a message asking him to come quickly to Gloria's school. Seeing Nicholas and Helen, Mike gave up trying to escape and collapsed. Nicholas, Helen, and I put Mike and the woman in the car and headed to the in-laws' house. In the living room of the in-laws' house, with the two seated side by side, I confronted them. So, why were you at Parents' Day?
It was nothing. She's just an acquaintance. A single mother who asked me to act as a father figure, nothing more.
But Gloria mentioned there are family photos of you at her house. Do you usually take family photos with just acquaintances? You don't need to lie so blatantly. Mike, resigning himself, began to explain. The woman's name was Johanna. He had been involved with her before we met. Johanna worked at a night bar, and thinking Nicholas and Helen wouldn't approve, he kept it hidden. After introducing me to his parents, he broke off the relationship with Johanna. But right after we got engaged, Johanna contacted him saying, I gave birth to your child. After seeing Irene, I couldn't help but go back to Johanna. I found her so adorable. That's when I asked something that had been bothering me. You can't have children, right? That medical report was real, wasn't it?
That's because...
Mike began to reveal something shocking. Right before our marriage, Johanna had told him, Don't have children with anyone but this child. And so, Mike had gone through with a vasectomy.
For such a selfish reason, you made me give up on having children. Do you understand how I felt?
Johanna laughed at my angry reproach. Shut up, loser. Mike loves me. You are just a pity marriage. When I asked, Is that true, Mike? He nodded. I married Mike because Nicholas and Helen liked me, and our parents got along well. I was efficient, took care of the house and personal matters perfectly. So he only ever saw me as a maid. So, a maid, huh? But now that it's out, there's no helping it. I'll divorce you. I have a woman I love and a lovely daughter. You're no longer needed. That's when Nicholas, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Did you forget why Emily's parents and we got along so well?
Huh?
The truth was, both our parents owned businesses and were in a cooperative relationship. Currently, Nicholas's company's most important client was the company where I now serve as a department head, owned by my parents. You might not know since you were sent to work at a friend's company for training, But if we lose the business with Emily's company, we won't survive. It was then revealed that Nicholas had always told Mike, "You'll take over someday, so keep up with the company's affairs." But Mike, not taking it seriously, was unaware that my parents' company was the most crucial client.
So, I intended to leave the company to you, but now there may not be a company to inherit. More importantly, we're disowning you. I never want to see the face of such a foolish son again.
As Nicholas declared disownment, Mike started to panic, begging Nicholas and Helen. But Nicholas and Helen firmly refused him. At that moment, I received an email on my mobile phone. Checking it, I smirked. "So, Johanna,
How's Irene's real dad doing?" Huh?
I confronted them with a photo of Johanna, heavily pregnant and looking cozy in a childbirth class with a brown-haired man unknown to me. "You seemed quite close to this man during your pregnancy. Where did he go?"
How do you have that?
I explained that when Flora took the children away, I had asked her to gather any information she could on this woman. Flora, using her network of mom friends, managed to get this photo. According to her mom friend,
this man used to accompany her to every prenatal checkup. I thought he was the new husband Mike knew about.
Hearing this, Johanna's face grew paler and paler. Mike was visibly shaken by the photo. No wonder, since the man in the picture and Irene looked remarkably alike.
Hey, Johanna! What's going on? This man looks exactly like Irene.
When I pressed her to tell the truth, Johanna seemed to resign herself and began to speak. She admitted to two-timing while with Mike, and said that she got pregnant right after they broke up, but after the child was born, they had a big fight, and he left. She thought it would be best to claim the child was Mike's, the prospective company president's, to monopolize Nicholas's inheritance, so she convinced Mike to have a vasectomy.
You're kidding! I believed in you and became incapable of having kids.
Mike shook Johanna's shoulders in disbelief, but she just turned pale and said nothing. Then Mike approached me.
I'm sorry, Emily. I was deceived by this woman. You said you'd stay with me even if we couldn't have kids. Let's start over. I only love you.
Huh? Didn't you just say I was no longer needed? Who's the maid? Mike was at a loss for words, so I declared,
We're getting a divorce. And I'll be suing both of you for adultery, so be prepared.
As Mike broke down crying, I told him,
Never show your face to me again.
I left Mike and Johanna to their ugly argument and walked away. Eventually, my divorce from Mike was finalized. I received $40,000 in alimony from Mike and $20,000 from Johanna. Nicholas and Helen, having disowned Mike and deeply apologized, persuaded my parents to continue the business dealings. They informed the president of the company Mike was supposed to inherit that they were leaving Mike's fate in their hands. Consequently, Mike, who had never been serious at work, was fired. Johanna moved away with her child and returned to night work, likely struggling with debts incurred from paying me alimony. After separating from Johanna and depleting his savings, jobless Mike lived alone in a showerless apartment, desperately job hunting. As for me, 3 years after leaving Mike, I remarried a sincere man I met through work, who treats me kindly, and we were blessed with the child I had always wished for. We're now looking forward to meeting our baby, enjoying each day happily. Can you lend me some money to go to the hospital? In the middle of the night, 8-year-old Owen came to our house. Moreover, he was limping in pain. It's over an hour's walk for an adult to our place. What on earth happened? Looking closer, various parts of his body were scraped, and he was bleeding. Exhausted and in pain, Owen's eyes were vacant, as if he might collapse at any moment.
Absolutely not!
My husband shouted at the innocent child. He was very angry and went somewhere. And then, I was shaken to my core by my husband's unexpected action. I am Kate, 60 years old. I lived with my husband, Raymond. Our son and his wife lived in the next town, about an hour's walk from our house, making a car essential for travel. Phil's wife, Linda, is 6 years younger than him, and they have an 8-year-old grandson, Owen. Until now, Phil often brought Owen to our house, so I had been taking care of Owen since he was a baby. On the other hand, Linda rarely came over and had told Phil, "Bring him here." However, it seems Linda has been devoted to housework and childcare, wanting to make some free time for her from now on. Moreover, Phil said, Linda is very domestic and takes good care of us, satisfied with their current family situation. There's no way to intervene, even as a mom. I told myself, letting them do as they wished. But I had no idea such a tragedy would strike us later. It was when Phil was promoted and decided to work abroad half a year ago. Phil, who hates being away from his family, wanted to leave Japan with his family. However, Linda objected. I told myself, letting them do as they wished. But I had no idea such a tragedy would strike us later. It was when Phil was promoted and decided to work abroad half a year ago. Phil, who hates being away from his family, wanted to leave Japan with his family. However, Linda objected.
Owen has just started elementary school and has friends. It's cruel to make him transfer.
Of course, Phil tried to persuade her. But Linda insisted, and with a heavy heart, he left for abroad alone. And sadly, at the same time, Owen stopped coming to our house. I have repeatedly asked Linda to let Owen visit, but each time she made up excuses to refuse. Still not giving up, I pleaded over the phone just to see him for a moment. Then Linda, raising her voice, ranted at me.
It's hard enough without Phil. I can't stand having to worry about you too. Are you trying to monitor me?
No, that's not it at all. Just a short time at the doorstep, I just want to see Owen's face.
Don't you understand I don't want that? If you keep pestering me, I'll tell Phil and have him scold you.
After saying that, Linda abruptly hung up. Sigh, it seems like nothing will help. Maybe that's just how a son's wife is. Phil had emailed me that his new job was demanding, cutting into his sleep time. Not wanting to cause Phil any more worry, I decided to wait to see Owen until Phil returned home. And before I knew it, more than half a year had passed since I last saw Owen. Raymond and I, missing seeing Owen's face, looked at his photos every day to distract ourselves. Raymond's favorite was a group photo from Owen's entrance ceremony. According to Raymond, Owen's anxious face was adorable. One evening, just as the clock struck 9 p.m., the sound of the house doorbell rang suddenly, so I opened the front door. Can you lend me some money to go to the hospital? What a surprise, 8-year-old Owen had come.
What happened to you?
My leg hurts, and I can't sleep at night, so I decided to go to the hospital myself. But this is all I have. When Owen slowly opened his palm, there were 3 dimes. Apparently, he had walked here, dragging his leg in pain, for over an hour. I fell on the way, said Owen, whose knees were scraped and bleeding. But no matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't understand. I decided to slowly listen to his story and invited Owen into the house for now. Then, at that moment, Raymond, who had been silent until then, suddenly spoke up.
Absolutely not. What are you saying? Are you out of your mind? Owen is in so much trouble.
Angry at Raymond's cold attitude, I grabbed his sweater with both hands and shook him. However, Raymond pulled my hands away with great force and, with a face like a demon, left the house without saying anything. It's because I came. I'm sorry. I'll go home now. Owen, completely shrunken, turned his back on me and reached for the doorknob. Owen, don't worry about Grandpa. I'll take you to the hospital myself, so no need to worry. I immediately called an ambulance and at the same time, I called Linda. But I couldn't get through to her, and my texts weren't even read. 20 minutes later, while all this was happening, the paramedics finally arrived. Owen was taken to a nearby hospital, and I accompanied him. Afterwards, Owen was diagnosed with a fracture by the doctor. He was treated and instructed to rest at home. What is Linda doing at a time like this? Even at this point, I couldn't get in touch with Linda, so I decided to take Owen back to our house. Would you like something warm to drink? You used to like tea with honey, didn't you? I'll prepare it now, so please sit in that chair and wait. As soon as we arrived home, I filled the kettle with water and turned on the stove. Then, Owen suddenly came close to me. Oh dear, you should be sitting still. It's not that, Grandma. You see. At this moment, I was told an astonishing truth by Owen. Owen, having confessed everything, had big tears in his eyes. So that's what happened. It must have been hard for you. But you can rest easy now. I hugged him gently, as if wrapping him in warmth. And then, I was informed of a certain event by an unexpected person.
Those who made Owen go through this will not get away with it.
A flame of revenge ignited within me. The next day at noon. Finally, Linda answered the phone. Owen has fractured his leg and was seen at the hospital. Now, he's at our place. Apparently, resting at home and eating nutritious food will help him heal faster. Then, Kate, please continue to take care of Owen for a while. You must be happy to be able to look after Owen so much since you haven't been able to see him until now, right? I just said, understood, and hung up. I had no intention of sending Owen back to that house. Even if Linda had said, I'm coming to pick up the child now, I planned to keep Owen with me by any means, so Linda's response was exactly what I wanted. However, I felt anger at her attitude as a mother. But I didn't want to get unnecessarily confrontational and spoil the plan. In the meantime, as I supported Owen, I ran around preparing for retaliation, and finally, everything was ready. All right, watch out. Today, right here, I'll bring you down. A week after Owen came to stay with us, I left him at home to look after himself for a bit while I, accompanied by someone, made a surprise visit to Linda's place.
What is this about? Showing up out of the blue. Please, just go home.
I had gotten a key to their house from Owen. Ignoring Linda's protests, I began to look around the room.
Was someone here just before we arrived?
I noticed that, although the room was generally tidy, the sheets on the bed in the bedroom were unusually disheveled.
Enough of this. I'll call the police if I have to.
Oh, Linda, you really think you're in any position to say that?
I've heard everything from Owen. Leaving him all alone while you're out at night, I see.
He was told not to tell anyone. What Owen had tearfully told me before was about this very issue. According to him, one day, feeling lonely and scared because he was sick, he tried to stop Linda from going out at night by standing in the doorway with his arms outstretched.
But you just pushed him aside and left anyway. He hurt his ankle when he fell.
Linda always told Owen.
Don't you dare tell Dad or anyone about what happens at home, or you'll go without food.
But that day, unable to bear the pain any longer, Owen thought, maybe Grandpa and Grandma can help somehow. So, relying on his memory, he limped all the way to our house.
If you have money for luxury brands, you should at least take Owen to the hospital.
When I opened the closet, it was packed with obviously expensive bags and clothes. Owen had confided in me.
Mom always has nice clothes and bags, but she doesn't care about me.
It was clear Linda's possessions were all high-end and flashy.
The loneliness without fill, you're trying to fill it with shopping. That's also on your son, you know.
Linda, veins throbbing with anger, pointed her finger at me. Then, suddenly, a low voice boomed from behind me.
Shut up! I've seen the affair with my own eyes.
The voice belonged unmistakably to Raymond. He had stormed Linda's home with me. That day Owen came to us seeking help.
Not lending it!
Raymond had shouted before storming off, leaving me initially infuriated. However, his anger was actually directed at Linda. Overwhelmed by fury, he had blurted out without thinking. Raymond had headed straight for Linda's house after leaving ours.
I saw you getting into a car driven by a man at that very moment. And I knew he was Owen's first-grade teacher.
Raymond had memorized the face of the teacher who had been in charge of Owen's class from looking at the school photo every day. After Owen revealed the truth to us, we were informed about Linda's secret rendezvous with Owen's former teacher.
I heard from the affair partner that you always dressed provocatively for parent-teacher meetings and aggressively flirted with him.
I confronted the former teacher based on Raymond's testimony. The affair partner admitted that despite knowing it was wrong, he gave in to Linda's temptations when Owen moved to a different class. The former teacher expressed remorse and readily agreed to pay the compensation. He had already submitted his resignation and promised never to see Linda again, planning to return to his hometown.
You stayed in Japan because you couldn't bear to part with him under the guise of for the child's sake, didn't you? Well, that's...
Linda faltered, caught off guard. I assumed that she hadn't taken Owen to the hospital after pushing him because she feared being discovered. And perhaps she thought Phil would cut her allowance if he found out, which is why she didn't take Owen to the hospital. Then, likely because I had accurately pinpointed the truth. Linda couldn't hide her agitation. However, after a brief pause, she defiantly claimed,
"If I beg Phil, he'll surely forgive me."
"Ha, he really loves me."
Linda, enough is enough. Phil, when did you get back?
Phil, having been informed by me, had hurried back to verify the truth with his own eyes. Believing Linda wouldn't show her true self in his presence, he secretly observed everything from the shadows.
I've heard it all. I can't forgive you. Your behavior towards Dad and Mom is too appalling. I want a divorce. Wait a minute. It was just a lapse in judgment. Plus, Owen is only 8. He needs his mom. I just visited Owen at the hospital, and he's made it clear he doesn't need a mom like you.
Even after receiving such a decisive blow from Phil, Linda desperately begged for reconciliation. But Phil steadfastly refused. Linda then turned to me with a fierce look, baring her teeth.
You've made him leave me because of your meddling. How do you plan to take responsibility for this? That's on you. Besides, I heard you've always seen Phil as nothing but an ATM.
I had been sniffing around Linda, checking if she had any secrets by going through the wedding guest list and making calls.
And I'll be sure to inform your parents about all of this, so be prepared. Stop! My dad hates dishonesty. If he finds out about this, I'll be disowned. Then who will take care of me?
You're an adult.
Why not work for yourself? No way! I've been living a comfortable housewife life on Phil's salary. I don't want to work now. It's too humiliating.
Faced with Linda's selfishness, both Raymond and Phil were dumbfounded, speechless.
You'd better experience some hardship and reflect on your actions.
Can't you do something? I'm sorry. I really am remorseful. You're the only one I can turn to now. Finally, Linda begged for forgiveness through her tears. However, I simply looked at her coldly, without giving any response. Perhaps thinking she had no other options left. She started to cry out.
I'm so sorry. Please help me.
Right there and then.
You know, Owen sought your help many times too. But you ignored all his pleas. Thinking only of yourself is really convenient, isn't it?
Hearing my words, Linda broke down crying, but I was unmoved and threw her out of the house. After that, Phil and Linda's divorce was finalized, and Linda was ordered to pay $30,000 in alimony. We also claimed $10,000 from her affair partner, the former teacher. But Linda, having drained her savings, got a job at a night bar only to be fired soon after due to her selfish nature. Currently, she's juggling jobs in road construction and cleaning. Phil still has to work abroad but has promised to return home whenever possible to see Owen. Until Phil returns, we, as a couple, have taken it upon ourselves to care for Owen. Filling the gap of the time we couldn't see him, watching Owen grow has brought true happiness to Raymond and me.
Turns out, she's just cuter and more vulnerable than you, which makes me want to protect her.
You know, men are drawn to protect women who appear weaker. My husband boasted, his face swollen with arrogance. This came after I'd stumbled upon his affair and confronted him, only to be met with a string of excuses and outright defiance. He sought my agreement, but there was no way I could nod along. Furthermore, he had no intention of leaving me or breaking things off with his mistress. Continuing a marriage with such a man was out of the question. So, I packed my bags, returned to my childhood home, and vented to my brother, Daniel. After hearing me out, Daniel broke into a broad smile.
Well, that's great news. What's great about it?
Hearing about my sister being cheated on, and his first reaction is that's great? I couldn't help but yell at him, but Daniel just kept smiling. And then, I noticed the fierce anger hidden behind his smile, an emotion that didn't quite match his expression. My name is Arya, and I'm 31 years old. Anthony, my husband, was a colleague at the same company. Since joining, we'd consult each other on work, collaborate, and eventually became friends who could talk about anything. We'd often go out for drinks, discussing not just work but also personal matters, deepening our bond. After a company party a few months later, Anthony confessed his feelings for me as we were leaving. Attracted to his bright, sociable nature and his kindness, I didn't hesitate to accept his proposal, and we began dating. Our relationship flourished as we continued to share meals and consult each other on work. Both of us loved exploring new places, leading to trips on weekends and vacations abroad. Spending more time with Anthony, I found myself increasingly drawn to him, eventually realizing I wanted to be with him forever. That moment in our 5th year at the company, when Anthony surprised me with a proposal, remains unforgettable. In a private room of a glamorous restaurant, opening the ring box, I was so moved that tears wouldn't stop. I had no reason to refuse, so I immediately accepted the proposal. We both loved breathtaking views, especially the sea, where we had many memories, so we decided to have our wedding in a place overlooking the ocean. Blessed with good weather, it was the best day. I enjoyed my work and wanted to continue discussing it with Anthony even after getting married, but working in the same environment as a couple was difficult, so I ended up transferring to another branch, although my job didn't change much. 3 years into our marriage, we were still happily living together. We would dine out several times a month and travel a few times a year. Our relationship with Anthony's parents was good, and we were living a happy married life. To anyone looking in, we must have seemed like the perfect couple. Indeed, I felt that way too. But that feeling lasted only until this day. Since the next day was a holiday, we had planned to dine out late after work, as we usually did. However, when work was winding down, I received a message from Anthony.
Sorry, Arya. I got invited to dinner by a client tonight, and I can't say no since they've been really good to us recently. I won't be able to make it to our dinner.
I felt lonely but said, I see. Can't be helped. I was looking forward to trying that restaurant, so let's go another time.
Sure, I'll make it up to you. I'll probably be late tonight, so don't wait up. Bye.
Anthony quickly ended the call. As I was about to leave work, my phone rang again. It was from my friend Camila. Hello?
Hey, Arya. Are you free tonight? Wanna grab a drink? It's been a while.
Actually, that works out. Anthony is out to dinner with a client tonight. Camila is my best friend. We're colleagues at the same company, though now we work in different departments. She gave a speech at my wedding and sometimes comes over to our place. Since she and Anthony were also hired at the same time, we've hung out as a trio several times, being drinking buddies with Anthony. It's always more fun when the 3 of us get together. Sometimes, like today, she'd call out of the blue, and we'd meet up for a casual drink when available. We decided to meet at the station near my house, so I left the office and headed to the station. The train arrived just in time, and I got to the station quite early, but Camila was already there waiting. Sorry to keep you.
Long time no see. I just got here too.
After exchanging a few words, we headed to a restaurant. There's a fairly large entertainment district on the way from the station to our house. And we entered a restaurant just off the main street of this area. We started with a toast with beer and then moved on to catching up, as usual.
How's it going recently? Anthony doing well?
Yeah, he's fine. Just the usual, you know? Work has settled down for now, so it's not as busy or tiring. How about you, Camila? Were you working around here today?
Exactly. This area falls under my jurisdiction, so I come here occasionally. On the contrary, I've been swamped with clients since the beginning of the month. I'm truly exhausted every day. At this rate, no man will come near me.
Camila is the epitome of a career woman. Though attractive in face and figure, her blunt personality and strong will seem to keep men at bay. After sharing what's on our minds and feeling the mutual encouragement to keep pushing forward, we left the restaurant in the usual high spirits. This entertainment district has a really nice vibe. Mind if we take a slow walk back? To that, I replied. Sure, a walk to the station will help sober us up. And so, we decided to stroll through the bustling streets towards the station. As we walked, our conversation continued. Arya, you're lucky. You've got a good husband, and it seems like your married life is going well. Are you thinking about having kids anytime soon? Well, we don't really talk about it much. We both love our jobs, and I worry about how pregnancy might affect my work. We're thinking someday, but it's hard to find the right timing. While discussing this, a certain restaurant came into view. It was the place Anthony and I had planned to dine at tonight. The windows were absent, replaced by glass walls allowing a dim view into the elegant interior. The orange chandeliers inside, deliberately subdued, caught my eye. Just as I thought, I'd like to come here next time, I recognized a familiar figure. I stopped in my tracks. Arya, what's wrong? Unable to respond to Camila, my gaze was fixed on the restaurant. There was Anthony, seated across from an unfamiliar woman. She appeared slightly younger than me, dressed in revealing clothing. Anthony had said he was dining with a client tonight, but the woman across from him hardly seemed like a business associate. They were chatting and laughing together. Isn't that Anthony? What's going on? Camila seemed to have noticed Anthony inside as well. I was too shocked to know what to do. Seeing my state, Camila suggested,
Arya, maybe you should confront him directly?
Yeah, you're right. I took out my mobile phone from my bag and took a photo of Anthony and the unknown woman. As I began to calm down, anger started to bubble up. Upon reaching the station, Camila offered,
Should I come with you to confront him? Having both of us there might make Anthony more likely to tell the truth.
Thanks, but it's a family matter. I'll talk to him myself. I declined her offer and we parted ways. On my way home, I struggled to contain the growing anger. About an hour after I arrived home, Anthony returned. I'm home.
Welcome back. How was dinner with the client?
It was tough, you know. They wanted to go to a second place, and they drink a lot. But I think I made a good impression. Right after he finished speaking, I pointed my mobile phone at him, showing him the photo.
This person is from your client? She looks quite young. Dressed not quite for work. Did she change before meeting you, Anthony?
What? Why? You didn't follow me, did you?
Of course not. I was dining out with Camila. We just happened to see this on our way back. Is this person really a client? Choosing such a fancy restaurant for dinner, from which company is she?
Well, what? Can't answer?
She's not someone you need to hide from me, right?
Sorry. Sorry? You mean this is an affair? She's your mistress? Hey! Answer me. Yes. I broke down crying. Why? Why would you do this? I thought we were doing fine.
It's your fault, Arya. You're always busy with work, and though you take care of home, I wanted you to pay more attention to me. You're straightforward and strong, but she's cute and makes me want to protect her. Eventually, I found it more enjoyable to be with her than with you."
Hearing those words was a shock. No longer feeling any affection from him. Clearly preferring his affair partner. I would have preferred he just said it was a friends with benefits. I couldn't stay any longer, packed what I needed, and left the house. Dragging my carry-on, I caught the last train home. The journey back home felt longer than usual. I don't remember what I was thinking. Maybe I was too hurt to think about anything. Next thing I knew, I was in front of my parents' house. I had a key but hadn't called ahead, so I rang the doorbell. Daniel, my brother, opened the entrance door.
"Daniel?
Hey! Long time no see. What brings you here at this hour?" Daniel is a workaholic. After graduating, he worked for a major company for 3 years before starting his own business. His sales have been growing steadily, and now he's the president of a company with dozens of employees. He hardly ever comes home, and he couldn't even attend my wedding due to an important business meeting. I knew Daniel got married a year ago from our parents, but since there was no wedding ceremony, I had only briefly greeted his wife, with whom I hadn't formed a close connection. It had been years since I last saw Daniel.
"Daniel, what about you? How are Mom and Dad?"
Haha. What about me? It's my parents' house too. I finally got a long vacation, so I thought I'd come back and do some filial piety. By the way, they're currently on a trip to Hawaii, using the travel vouchers I gave them. Never thought I'd be house-sitting. His cheerful demeanor hadn't changed. A bit too carefree, but he's the type to make bold moves. I could imagine his employees finding it a pleasant place to work. "So, what brings you here at this time, Arya?" I was taken aback by Daniel's presence, momentarily forgetting why I had come home.
"Sorry. I just had some trouble at home. I was hoping to stay here for a while."
"Ah, of course. It's not my house, but it's fine. Your room is available, so come on in. Once you're settled, I'll make some coffee and you can tell me all about it." I felt comforted by Daniel's warmth. After setting down my bags, I decided to take a shower to freshen up. I felt a bit better, but I couldn't calm down. Anger was bubbling up inside me. When I entered the living room, Daniel was watching TV. "Refreshed? I'll make some coffee then." As Daniel turned off the TV and I sat down, I began to tell him about the day's events over coffee. How we had been getting along as a married couple. How we had planned to go out to dinner as usual. How he canceled because he said he was going out to dinner with a client. How I ended up drinking with Camila. And, showing the photo on my mobile phone to Daniel, I told him.
"On the way back from drinking, I saw Anthony and this woman at the restaurant we were supposed to go to. When I confronted him after he came home, he admitted to having an affair with her, saying she was cuter and made him want to protect her more than me."
I told the story through tears. Daniel listened to me until the end, looking at my mobile phone. When I finished, he looked up and said something I never expected. I thought Daniel would comfort me, tell me to leave such a man, and be on my side. However, Daniel, with a wide smile, said,
"Arya, that's great."
I slammed my hands on the table and stood up in disbelief. "How is that great?" I said, returning to my room. I couldn't understand why Daniel would say that. Just thinking about it made me even angrier. I shouldn't have said anything. I regretted talking to Daniel as I lay down on the bed. I didn't want to return to the house where Anthony was, so I stayed at my parents' house. Daniel and I didn't talk much after that day. It was tough that I commute to work from my parents' house during the weekdays. It took twice as long as usual. I spent my time thinking about how hard it would be to file for divorce and demand compensation. A week later, on the weekend, I decided to relax in my room and play some mobile games, enjoying a leisurely time for the first time in a while. Just as I was thinking about getting some lunch, the doorbell rang.
Who could that be?
It was unusual to have visitors, so I went to the entrance. Then, there was Anthony. And he was apologizing to Daniel, who stood there imposingly. Why, though? Shouldn't he be apologizing to me, not Daniel? Then I heard Daniel's voice. I never imagined the other party would be you. I'm sorry, I didn't know. Anthony was still apologizing to Daniel. Layla's cuter and needs protection, huh? Layla? The only Layla I knew was Daniel's wife. Confused, Daniel continued. Lately, Layla's been acting restless and clearly hiding something from me. Her expressions when I talked to her weren't right, so I started suspecting an affair. I was considering hiring a detective, and right then, Arya came back home. I was shocked when Arya showed me a photo of your affair, and there was Layla in it. Sad but also surprised that it was a family member involved. You never know what's going to happen. This will make the divorce court and compensation claims easier, though. I was speechless. Turns out, Anthony's affair partner was Daniel's wife, Layla. The woman Anthony had been dining with wore heavy makeup, completely unrecognizable to me. It had been a while since I last saw her, and I didn't remember her wearing that much makeup. When you contacted me, I truly felt sorry for what I had done. I will cut off all contact with Layla, so please forgive me. Apparently, Daniel had reached out to Anthony about the affair. Daniel noticed me standing there, stunned. Oh, Arya. You heard the conversation? Yeah, most of it. Good. Now we have all the information we need on Anthony and Layla, his affair partner. This will make it easier to file for compensation in the divorce proceedings. It's good you came home, Arya. Daniel said to me with a smile. So that's what it was. At that moment, I understood the meaning behind Daniel's words from a week ago. Why he had said that's great. What was Daniel feeling at that time? He was trying to comfort me, but maybe he was also speaking to himself. Thinking about Daniel's feelings, I decided to divorce Anthony and claim compensation in the divorce proceedings. Arya. It's my fault. Please forgive me. I can't pay the compensation if you demand it in the divorce proceedings. I ignored Anthony's plea for help. I'll contact you later with the details. Be prepared. Daniel then kicked Anthony out of the house. Afterward, Daniel told Layla about the divorce and filed for compensation. Layla initially resisted but seemed to accept the demands after discussing Anthony. I also demanded a divorce and compensation from Anthony. After being clearly told by Daniel, Anthony complied without resistance. When the divorce was finalized, I received a call. It was from Anthony's mother. Expecting a scolding, I hesitantly answered, but heard an apology instead. She was sincerely sorry for his actions. It seemed Anthony blamed Layla for the divorce, and Layla blamed Anthony, leading to their breakup. His parents apologized repeatedly for their son's inadequacies and said they had disowned him. Hearing this from them, I felt a sense of relief. Anthony was now disowned by his parents, with no one to turn to, left alone. I decided to start anew. Every month, the compensation from Anthony was deposited, but one day, he showed up at my parents' house, asking to reduce the compensation. Please, can you reduce the compensation? No way. Do you understand how I felt being cheated on? There's no reducing the compensation unless my feelings are healed. Leave. I turned him away. Yet, he kept coming back, week after week, asking for a reduction. The compensation won't change no matter how many times you come. If you keep this up, I'll call the police. I responded calmly. But Anthony apparently didn't believe I would actually call the police. His demands eventually shifted from reducing the compensation to stopping payments entirely, even suggesting a condescending offer of reconciliation. When I started calling the police right in front of him, Anthony changed his demeanor and fled from the house. The police advised me not to open the door anymore and to install a monitor-equipped doorbell to use if I recognized him. Fearing the police, Anthony resorted to sending lengthy text messages and making phone calls. After changing my email and phone number, things finally quieted down. However, Anthony tried to visit the branch where I worked without any business, and even enlisted colleagues to try to contact me, becoming a nuisance at both the main and branch offices. Once, I received a message from Camila. Working close to Anthony's department at the headquarters, Camila had been keeping a close eye on Anthony's current situation. Anthony, having begged a colleague to reach out to me, had his divorce exposed, and his harassment became known due to being spotted near my house during his commute. Realizing no one was on his side, feeling uncomfortable under their gazes and attitudes, he voluntarily resigned from the company. Despite his job search efforts, he struggled to find employment. And, unfortunately, joined a company involved in illegal activities. Desperate, he pleaded with the HR department to rehire him. Having abandoned all his responsibilities for his own convenience, there was no place for Anthony upon his attempted return. He was swiftly turned down, and Anthony, lacking the courage to resign a second time, endured a harsh life of commuting with the first train and working unpaid overtime until the last train. On the other hand, Layla had reached out several times, wondering if there was any chance to reconcile. However, Daniel recognized there was no love left. Like Anthony, Layla had quit her job upon the scandal becoming known, hoping to escape the situation. Sometime after the divorce, fearing poverty, Layla pleaded with Daniel, unable to pay the divorce settlement, and asked for a chance to start over. Daniel, seeing her focus solely on money, realized her true intentions. Refusing to reconcile or reduce the settlement, Layla claimed she couldn't pay because she had no money, failing to contribute a cent. Daniel, undeterred, contacted her parents. They were unaware of the divorce. They hurriedly apologized and paid on her behalf. Layla thought this settled everything, but her parents, having only covered the costs temporarily, demanded repayment and were furious. Now, Layla works under strict conditions at her parents' farm, which they manage. Since then, Daniel and I have been in touch more frequently, sharing updates, how we've been, and the freshness of reconnecting after a long time brings a sense of family appreciation. Daniel continues to lead a busy life with work but seems to enjoy his days. It took me a while to recover. The shock of the affair and the loss of my married life brought stress. But support from family, bosses, seniors, and friends helped me view the experience positively. Now, without considering marriage, I'm enjoying my single life. So, how about giving Mom back to us? My brother Ralph and his wife, who selfishly abandoned our mom Melanie, on their own terms, now come to demand her return as if it's their right, without even an apology. I'm embarrassed and ashamed that such a despicable man is my brother. My name is Allegra. I'm 38, working while raising 2 daughters, aged 7 and 5. I married Lucas, my colleague, and we're still working at different branches of the same company. Lucas is kind and helpful with childcare and housework, but when we hit our busy season, both of us are swamped at work. At that time, finishing late and rushing to pick up our kids from daycare and school. We decided to work together as a couple, but I feel like crying because of physically and mentally exhausted. My mom, who lives about a 30-minute drive away, supports me through these times. Also today, beaten by the busy season and unable to cook, she brought a load of her homemade dishes. When Mom opens the door, my daughters rush to her as if they've been waiting. Grandma! Welcome back! Oh, it should be hello first. Ignoring my amused reaction, my daughter takes Mom's hand and leads her into the house. My girls just adore their kind and fun-loving grandma. Allegra, I also bought your favorite pudding. Have some with the kids later. Mom, thank you. Delicious meals, playing with the kids, and even caring for me, I'm deeply grateful to Mom. But then, her mobile phone rings, it shattering the peaceful moment. Hi, got it. I'll be back soon. After hanging up, Mom sighs softly. From Cheryl? Yes. She wants me to buy a cheesecake from that new bakery. More of Cheryl's whims. You had kind of same issue before. Cheryl doesn't work, she should buy it herself. I know. But she's hurt because of Ralph. I need to be kind to her. Mom, if they ask too much, Promise you'll tell me, okay? Thank you. Mom smiles brightly for reassuring me.
Still, I can't help but worry about Mom's relationship with Ralph's family.
Ever since Dad passed away 2 years ago, Mom's been living with Ralph and his wife. During the discussion about Dad's inheritance, Ralph and his wife suggested Mom to live together. Mom, who suffered from mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflicts, initially refused it.
But Ralph insisted and was wanting to live with Mom at any cost.
When I probed further, it turned out Ralph had been fired few months ago. He messed up something and couldn't find work in the same industry. Now he got another job, but its salary drastically reduced. Unable to afford his high-rise apartment with a monthly rent of $2,000, he wanted to inherit the family home in exchange for taking care of Mom.
It wasn't out of concern for Mom living alone, but for money. I advised against it, saying it would only bring stress, and Cheryl, who was unemployed, could work to support themselves. However, Cheryl, my sister-in-law, cried out, "But Ralph promised during his proposal that I wouldn't need to work ever."
She was adamant about not working. Eventually, Mom gave in and agreed to the living arrangement, as blaming Ralph for breaking his promise to Cheryl. Since moving in, Cheryl was feeling betrayed by Ralph, stays in her room, surfing the web or playing online games. She leaves all the housework and shopping to Mom, making her run errands like today. It's frustrating to see Mom being taken advantage by Cheryl. Even when I express my concern for Mom's well-being to Ralph, he, feeling guilty towards Cheryl, just avoids the issue. And Mom, she just says, "It's Ralph's fault," and gives in to Cheryl's demands. It seems Cheryl resorts to verbal abuse when things don't go her way. Mom is completely innocent in this. Feeling helpless about how to improve the situation for Mom, and frustrated that I couldn't do anything, a worst-case scenario unfolded. One weekend. Got something to discuss. Unexpectedly, Ralph came to our house. I had a bad feeling, but sent the kids and Lucas to the park and welcomed Ralph into the living room. Ralph, looking conspicuously gloomy, sipped the tea I prepared and then started speaking gravely. "You know about the bad blood between Cheryl and Mom, right?" "Well, yeah," I said ambiguously. "It's more like Cheryl is just using Mom for her own benefit." Ralph seems oblivious to my reaction, nodded exaggeratedly. "Cheryl's so stressed about it, it's a real problem." "Huh. I think it's Mom who looks worse off. I'm her husband, I need to prioritize Cheryl." "Huh. That's admirable, a true model of husband." "So, I've decided Mom should move out." "Huh." His outrageous statement made me yell in disbelief. "Kicking out Mom? Not Ralph and his wife? No way! Why should Mom leave?" Ralph was visibly shaken by my outburst, continued his selfish reasoning. "No choice. Cheryl's been crying and saying she can't live with Mom anymore." "Then Ralph should leave." "That's impossible. You know, my salary dropped from $100,000 to $40,000. I can't survive if I leave that house." "That's because you got yourself fired. If Cheryl doesn't want to lower her living standards, she should work." "Nah, Cheryl really doesn't want to work." "That's all Ralph and Cheryl's convenience. Don't make Mom clean up Ralph's mess anymore. How about Mom, living on her pension, supposed to survive if she's kicked out of her house?" I couldn't believe how selfish this couple was. Anger boiling over, I fiercely accused Ralph, who darted his eyes around in panic. Then he dropped a bombshell. "I get it, I do. Your anger. But aren't you forgetting something?" "What?" "The house is in my name." His chilling words froze my heated mind. That was under the condition that Ralph would take care of Mom, right? Yeah, but, you know, situations change. Ideals and reality differ. Why is this someone else's problem to you? Can't help it. No matter what you say, legally, that house is mine. Ralph smirked smugly. Ah, this man. He planned to kick out Mom all along. You are despicable.
I hurled the word at him, filled with all my contempt.
Ralph looked down at me with cold eyes, his mouth twisted oddly, laughing.
Ha ha ha.
After laughing and popping a snack into his mouth, Ralph went away and left me trembling with anger. Anger, sadness, disappointment. My head was swirling with negative emotions. Above all, thinking of Mom, betrayed by Ralph, made my heart ache, almost bringing me to tears.
I can't let Mom get hurt anymore. I have to protect Mom.
That night, after the kids were asleep, I told Lucas about what happened during the day. Holding back tears, with a trembling voice, I shared my story. Lucas, deep in thought for a while after hearing me, finally spoke slowly. "Hey, how about we invite Melanie to stay with us?" Eh? I was taken aback by Lucas's suggestion. I had intended to invite Mom to live nearby. So Lucas's suggestion was more than I could have hoped for. Is that okay?
Why not? Melanie has done so much for us. It's about time we can repay her kindness. I'm actually happy about it,
Lucas said, smiling in a way that made him look almost divine. Lucas, thank you. Sure thing. It's been a while since our family grew. I resolved to love this playful man for the rest of my life. A month later we made up our minds. I went to my parents' house to bring Mom to our home. This house now belongs to Ralph. Never set foot in here again. I'll never forget Cheryl's harsh parting words. Mom was downcast in the car and stood anxiously at our front door when we arrived. My heart ached at her sight, and I was lost for words. It was my daughters who melted Grandma's worries, bursting out of the house with smiles.
"Grandma, come in quick. We're having a party today. It's a welcome party for Grandma, Dad said so. Sis and I decorated your room. And there's cake too. Look, look."
Lila, Marla.
"Melanie, welcome home."
Lucas. Touched by the welcome from my daughter and Lucas, Mom's eyes moistened. I too wiped away hidden tears. Mom's insurance money from Dad, and nearly everything else, had been siphoned off to support Ralph's family. It seemed they let Mom go because there was nothing left to exploit. Really, they're just the worst. And so it began our life with Mom. Initially, I worried about burdening Lucas, despite his kindness in taking Mom in. But that concern quickly vanished. Because Mom's housekeeping skills were incredible. Coming home from work, I'd find delicious smells, a clean house, and neatly folded laundry. When I realized vegetables were growing in planters what used to be full of random flowers, and my vegetable-hating daughter was happily harvesting and munching on them. Before I knew it, Mom had even become friends with the neighbors, chatting in gardens I had never visited. Not wanting to leave everything to Mom, I joined her in the kitchen when work was less demanding. But I couldn't come close to matching her efficiency and flair. I used to be terrible at housework. My mother-in-law always scolded me. Mom would say, and laughing. Eating her perfect dishes, I was constantly reminded of Mom's incredible skills as a homemaker and the effort it took to get there. Thanks to Mom's magic-like homemaking, Lucas and I could fully dedicate ourselves to work. Especially Lucas, who, since Mom moved in, his sales performance significantly improved and even topped the branch for the first time.
"Melanie is like a goddess of fortune,"
Lucas said with admiring eyes, while Mom just chuckled. On weekends, no longer filled with chores meant more time with the kids. The newfound ease in Mom and Dad's lives brought more smiles to our children's faces during the weekdays. There have been other changes too, but living with Mom has definitely been a positive for us. Of course, we still have things to adjust to with each other, but work and private life are going almost frighteningly well. On the other hand, things haven't been going well for Ralph and his wife since Mom left. After Mom's departure, Cheryl initially enjoyed the mother-in-law-free life, and Ralph seemed relieved seeing Cheryl so happy. But it appeared they hadn't really adjusted to a life without Mom's support. Cleaning was minimal, walls stayed dirty, and the garden was neglected. Laundry piled up for a week, washed but never put away. Garbage accumulated because sorting was too bothersome. In no time,
the house turned into a neglected mess, overrun with weeds and looking like a dirty junkyard inside and out.
Of course, meals were all about eating out and deliveries.
Under such living conditions, it's no wonder work wasn't going well.
Ralph, who had been fairly enthusiastic about his new job before kicking Mom out, fell ill often due to his unhealthy lifestyle, and faced the threat of being fired again due to constant lateness and absenteeism.
The neighbors, who had been fond of the kind and sociable Mom, could never welcome Ralph and his wife.
They weren't harassed, but they were definitely left out. This tragic situation of the Ralphs was relayed by Mom's friend, who lives nearby. Moreover, their house is a 45-year-old wooden structure. Without careful maintenance, it's prone to problems.
The neglected water heater broke down, and Cheryl, who disliked letting others into the house, that's why it LEDs for days on end with only cold water in the winter. In spring, a wasp nest formed under the eaves, and Cheryl, who hadn't noticed, got stung badly.
Of course, with Ralph and his wife's scant earnings and constant spending, money was tight.
Cheryl, cooped up in her room, seemed low-cost at a glance, but it turns out she was spending about $1,000 a month on online gaming.
With over half of Ralph's salary was vanishing into gaming expenses, Ralph finally realized the gravity of the situation and wanted to stop Cheryl's gaming habit. It makes daily arguments between a desperate Ralph and a Cheryl unwilling to quit.
So, I was thinking, maybe we could get Mom back.
What do you mean, so?
Just 6 months after separating from Mom, Ralph came asking to take her back, without an apology, earning nothing but contempt.
Lucas, standing next to me, had an expressionless face.
It's just that ever since Mom left, it's been one misfortune after another. It's not misfortune, it's just the result of your own actions. Wouldn't things be solved if Cheryl did some housework and got a job?
Well.
Ralph glanced at Cheryl, who averted her eyes. Clearly, Cheryl had no intention of doing anything, just wanting Mom back as a convenient slave. Nothing but contempt for the selfish and dependent Ralph couple.
At that moment, Mom appeared from the living room. Though I had told her she could stay hidden, the commotion over her must have piqued her interest.
Ralph, my child.
Mom's face was expressionless too. Yet Ralph happily addressed her.
Mom, you heard, right? You want to return to the house Dad built, don't you? Cheryl, too, says it's better with you around. Cheryl, is that true?
Well, yeah. Cheryl mumbled a response, looking down. Despite her clear lack of enthusiasm, Ralph said,
See, Cheryl is happy too. Let's go home.
He reached out his hand to Mom. Mom gazed at Ralph's hand.
Mom, who cherished the house she had with her husband. Mom, who couldn't quite abandon Ralph.
My heart raced at the thought of the compassionate Mom returning to Ralph's side again. But the next moment, Mom swatted his hand away.
I'm not going back. What? I never want to live with you two again. Mom! Mom!
I exclaimed in surprise, and Ralph in despair.
Why? Your son is in trouble. You used to say that parents should help their children when they fail.
As Ralph lamented and Cheryl looked on in shock, Mom spoke calmly.
I used to think that too. But I was wrong. What? Living with Allegra and her husband made me see. When Allegra failed, her husband Lucas supported her, and when Lucas and I had awkward moments, Allegra, as his wife, would step in and resolve them. That's what marriage is about, supporting and growing with each other. Mom. I felt tears welling up at Mom's words. It was also my fault for not letting go. I thought that as a mother, I was responsible for my son's actions regardless how old he gets. But I realized that by always stepping in, I was robbing you of the chance to grow as people and as a couple. You're 40 now. Your time of parental obligation is long past. Clean up your own mess. But Mom...
Rejected by Mom, Ralph, a big man, flustered in a way he'd never imagined. Ignoring him, Mom turned to Cheryl, who was irritably biting her nails.
Cheryl, the promise to be a housewife forever was only with Ralph. I have no obligation to take care of a stranger. You don't have to work, but live a life that suits that choice. Cheryl glared at Mom resentfully. But Mom didn't care anymore. Ralph, you inherited that house. You can continue living there or sell it. But I'm done doing anything for you and your wife. But Mom, I... Go home. And don't ever show your face to me again. Frightened by Mom's ferocity for the first time, Ralph fled. Cheryl, left behind, glared at us fiercely before following Ralph. Oh. Mom, drained, slumped to the ground. Before I could rush to her, Lucas was already at her side. Ah, that felt refreshing. Nice job, Mom. Lucas offered his hand with a smile, and Mom grasped it, smiling happily. However, the Ralph couple, still dependent on others, didn't change easily. Ralph, devastated by Mom's rejection, neglected his job even more. Cheryl didn't work, eventually resorting to loans for gaming expenses. By the time Ralph noticed Cheryl's debt, it was too late. Debt collectors came every day, the house was seized for unpaid taxes, and the couple, with nowhere to go, declared bankruptcy. Ralph was fired again and now works long hours at a live-in factory in the mountain, where taught by scary people. Of course with Cheryl. Cheryl, unaccustomed to real work, seems to be going insane every day in the harsh labor and internet-free environment. Ralph frightened by her craziness. I want to divorce and return. He begged, but I replied. The family home you took was auctioned off because of you. You have no place to return to, so live happily ever after with Cheryl. Then he broke down crying pitifully. How foolish. The only brother I share blood with, but that's all I can think. 7 years later. Celebrating our 15th wedding anniversary, my husband and I were on a trip to Anchorage. Mom suggested we celebrate as a couple while she looked after the kids. Our middle school daughters, still adoring Grandma, were excited about a pajama party with her, posting on social media. Lucas and I have been successful in our careers, with him in a significant position at headquarters and me working hard as a branch manager. We're grateful to Mom for supporting our lives, and to kind-hearted Lucas for living harmoniously with her. Ah, I wish we could go to the zoo too. Anchorage is too big, so it can't cover in just a 2-night, 3-day trip. We can come back for the next anniversary again. Thinking of a future still together in 5-10 years. I felt fortunate to have met Lucas, munching happily on delicious food. My name is Mary. I'm 28 years old. After graduating from college with a degree in life design, I've been working at a design company for 5 years. I have a partner and we recently had a wedding. My partner's name is Kevin. Kevin works in sales at an advertising agency. He's kind and trustworthy. We'd been gradually preparing for our wedding, amidst our work and daily lives. Both of us are only children, and our parents were eagerly looking forward to our marriage. But there's this unbelievable person who tried to ruin our wedding. This time, I want to talk about that person, Rory, a colleague of Kevin's at work. It was a few months after Kevin and I got engaged and had sent out our wedding invitations. I was invited to a cafe by my college friend, Kate. It's been a while, Kate. What did you want to talk about? Mary, what should I do? My boyfriend, he broke off our engagement. Broke off the engagement? What do you mean? Asked by a coworker, Kate had reluctantly joined a party to make up numbers. Just put in an appearance for a minute, and you can leave early. She was told that. I had kept declining again and again because I was engaged, but I couldn't refuse outright. Kate didn't think she drank much, but she got quite drunk. Her memory was fuzzy, and next thing she knew, it was morning. And then... I was apparently assaulted while I was drunk and asleep. No way! By one of the men at the party! Kate confided with tears streaming down her face. Then, she touched her belly. I was speechless. Kate had gotten pregnant that night at the party.
She had maintained a chaste relationship with her fiancé. It definitely wasn't her fiancé's child. Kate couldn't keep it a secret and confessed everything honestly. Then, her fiancé exploded in anger. He scolded her for her careless behavior and called off their engagement. After telling me this, Kate broke down in tears.
What should I do? I'm so stupid. I never thought this would happen. Kate, it's not your fault. The man who assaulted a drunk woman is to blame. It's a crime.
We must make the man responsible face the consequences. We must never give up. I decided to be there for Kate, no matter what.
So, do you know who the guy is?
Yeah. There were 3 men, but the most suspicious one is. I was shocked to hear the name. There was someone with the same name among Kevin's colleagues. When I told Kevin about my conversation with Kate, he looked pained.
Rory! Damn it! What a terrible thing he's done. Is it really him? The Rory who's your colleague? Yeah. He was bragging a while back about sleeping with a woman from a trading company. We can't forgive this,
Kevin said, clenching his fists tightly. Rory worked in sales at the same advertising agency as Kevin, and he's the son of the executive director. His personality was frivolous and he was a bit of a show-off. He tended to get carried away and acted recklessly. Moreover, he lacked a sense of responsibility and tended to shift blame and escaped when things went south.
Someone else will clean up his mess, he thinks. He's the worst. He's even blamed me for his mistakes several times. Truly awful.
We must make Rory pay for what he did to Kate. In secret, we began to help Kate prepare to sue Rory. Then, a few days later, the day of my wedding with Kevin arrived. The issue with Kate was still unresolved, but the wedding couldn't be postponed. I did contact Kate to apologize.
I'm sorry, my friend is going through a tough time, and here I am getting married.
Don't worry about it. I'm sorry for canceling my attendance so suddenly. Kate congratulated me on my wedding multiple times. Determined to honor her feelings, I decided to make today's ceremony beautiful. But one thing bothered me. Rory, a colleague of the groom, was also there. I'm really sorry. If we didn't invite him, it would cause trouble later. It's okay. We can't help it. Let's make him pay for his crimes after this is over. Rory was making a scene, drinking more than enough welcome drinks. He was more conspicuous than us at our wedding reception. And it wasn't in a good way. His face was bright red. His eyes leered. And he wouldn't stop talking. His inner ugliness was all too apparent on the outside. This man ruined my dear friend's future. I wished he would just leave. But I couldn't say such a thing. I endured it, following Kevin's lead. All the while, Rory continued his commotion. As the reception progressed, it was time for the best man's speech. Suddenly, Rory enthusiastically raised his hand.
Hey, hey, hey! Let me as a colleague say a few words first.
It wasn't planned, but Kevin's dad allowed it, thinking it was a good opportunity. Kevin and I exchanged glances. We had a bad feeling. Rory, unsteady on his feet, went to the microphone and bowed. Then he grinned.
Actually, I have some unfortunate news for everyone here. Our groom, Kevin. You see, he once impregnated my girlfriend.
The banquet hall erupted into chaos. Everyone's attention turned to Kevin. I saw Kevin's mom faint in the family section of the groom's side. My relatives stood up one after another and demanding.
What do you mean? Explain this.
Kevin was cornered and visibly shaken. The staff was confused. Rory was laughing loudly. He clearly enjoying the turmoil he caused. I couldn't stand it anymore.
Enough is enough. What's fun about making up nonsense and troubling people? You're the one who assaulted my friend and got her pregnant. I know it. I will never forgive you for what you did to my friend, and we will definitely sue you.
My outburst suddenly quieted the hall. I borrowed a microphone from a nearby staff member and continued.
Recently, my friend was assaulted at a party and became pregnant against her will. She's in utter despair. The perpetrator of that assault is him, Rory. No, not true. Don't make up such nonsense. It's not a lie, we have evidence. We conducted a DNA test on the fetus. It didn't match with any man but you. What? When did they do such a test? Everything is almost ready for the lawsuit. Be prepared. Honestly, I didn't want to invite you here. Kevin and I struggled with it. But the incident came to light after we sent the invitations, so we endured it.
At the request, I passed the microphone to Kevin. He sighed deeply, glared at Rory, and said,
You recklessly ruined Mary and my reception. I'll never forget this grudge. You will pay for your crimes.
Now, all eyes in the hall were on Rory. Caught in his guilt, Rory started yelling pathetically.
Kevin, you're getting too big for your boots. It's your fault for getting married. You shouldn't have gotten married before me, someone like you.
Rory was subdued by security and escorted out of the venue. He continued to resist pathetically until the end. As order was restored, the reception resumed. Kevin's boss, Tom, addressed the situation.
I apologize for my subordinate's terrible behavior. He will be dealt with severely. His misconduct and lies have been a major issue within our company. As his superior, I deeply regret not guiding him properly.
Tom apologized. And then he esteered Kevin's honor. Meanwhile, Kevin's sincerity is well known in our company. Even when troubled by that man earlier, Kevin handled it calmly. His focus on maintaining harmony in the department, rather than his personal interests, is truly admirable. There aren't many men as trustworthy and promising as Kevin. Mary, you're lucky. You've found a wonderful partner.
I sincerely congratulate the two of you on your marriage.
Tom concluded. The hall erupted in applause. Then, relatives and friends came to congratulate us. Everyone apologized to Kevin, saying they were sorry for doubting him. Kevin just gave a wry smile. A warm atmosphere returned to the hall. If it weren't for that man, Kate could have enjoyed such happiness too. While enjoying the reception, my hatred for Rory deepened. Later, I heard Rory was hung out to dry at Kevin's company. Tom was really angry and explained everything at the executive meeting. The executive director, Rory's father, was present. He deeply apologized to the president and everyone in the meeting room.
Please allow me to apologize, as a father. My son has caused you all great inconvenience. I'm truly sorry. Dad! No, it's not like that. I didn't mean to. About the party, it was just the alcohol and an irresistible force. Shut up. I don't want to hear another word from you. I made a mistake in how I raised you. You're a burden to the company, a disgrace to our family. You're the blemish of my life.
Even after being disowned by his father, Rory continued his pathetic resistance. But his misconduct and foolishness were already well known to all. Not a single employee sided with Rory or tried to help him. Eventually, Rory chose to resign voluntarily. Everyone at work was relieved. Kevin told me that. It was truly pitiful to be rejoiced at one's departure. Naturally, no one attempted to organize a farewell party for Rory. Packing his belongings, Rory left the company with drooped his shoulders. There were developments in the assault case too. Kate's former fiancé filed a claim for damages against Rory. The cost of the engagement ring, the money paid to the venue, cancellation fees, and more. He had covered most of it. The claim for damages is quite substantial.
Kate, what about you? The Rory's lawyer offered a settlement, right?
I absolutely refuse to just take the money and end this.
He must atone for his crime.
Kate no longer had the baby in her womb. She had a miscarriage at 4 months. Likely it was due to the intense stress and sorrow she endured. The sad experience seemed to have made Kate stronger. The amount of damages demanded from Rory by Kate's ex-fiancé was around $30,000. Rory tried to borrow money from his parents, but they firmly refused. So, he had to cover it all with his savings and loans. Rory tried to find a new job but struggled to make it to the final interview.
His frivolous appearance must be getting in the way, Kevin speculated.
Recently, Rory has been working multiple part-time jobs just to earn his daily expenses. Most of the money he earns, however, goes towards paying off his debts. A few days later, I got a message from Kate saying she had filed a lawsuit against Rory. She was ready to fight, with her lawyer by her side. DNA tests and testimonies confirmed that Rory was undoubtedly the father of the child. Taking advantage of someone drunk and unconscious to commit a forceful act falls under the crime of sexual assault. The statutory penalty is a fixed-term imprisonment of at least 5 years. Unfortunately for Kate, Rory's lawyer was quite skilled. In the end, Rory was sentenced to 4 years in prison. As he was leaving the courtroom, he repeatedly apologized to Kate.
I was apologized to over and over, but I never thought of forgiving him.
That's right.
He should live the rest of his life atoning for his sins.
Rory's actions, driven by his desires, disrupted Kate's life. The extinguishing of a small life was not unrelated to him. The crime committed by Rory was not only taking the precious life of a fetus but also subjecting the mother to immense stress. Rory, who acted recklessly without thinking of the consequences, caused suffering to many. He should spend his entire life atoning for his sins. I strongly wished it. The 4 years without Rory seemed to bring calm to many. I heard Kate recently started a new relationship.
I told him everything. About being a victim of sexual crime, about the miscarriage. It was hard. But he said it must have been tough. I'll take care of everything.
It's wonderful. Really wonderful that you found such a great person. When I heard the story, I couldn't help but tear up myself. A person who knew about Kate's emotional scars and the details of the incident, yet still chooses to stay by her side. He seems to be a much more understanding and kinder man than her previous fiancé. In these past 4 years, Kevin and I also became parents. Our child is a boy, now a 1.5 years old. Kevin looks after him when I'm not around. Every day, we're fumbling through parenting, hustling, and bustling. How about you, Mary? How's married life? Is the baby cute? Thanks to you, all is well. We fight sometimes, but our child is unconditionally adorable. I'm envious. I want a child soon too. I still think about the one I lost.
Kate, don't blame yourself, okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm looking forward. Someday, I want to welcome a child with my current partner. And this time, I want to love them with all my heart. Kate's emotional wounds will probably never completely heal. But I'm sure the happy times ahead will heal her. Let's both keep pushing forward. That day, Kate and I waved goodbye to each other. One day, Kevin told me he had encountered Rory, who had been released from prison. When he was walking down the street during work, Rory approached him.
His hairstyle and look were different, but his eyes and way of speaking were the same.
Kevin said with a look of disgust. Apparently, Rory had asked him for money.
He's been going around asking acquaintances for money, even just $1. When he asked me if he managed to borrow any, I just replied, "Don't ask." Of course. No one would want to deal with him. Everyone knows about his crimes. What happened next? He started saying, "Why me?" So I scolded him. It's your own fault your life is a mess. Reflect on it.
Rejected by Kevin, Rory slumped his shoulders and disappeared into the crowd. Later, Kevin heard a disheartening story about Rory from the executive director. Rory had cunningly swindled money from a young relative who had just started working. That fool. He said he could multiply the money through investments.
How awful. What happened to the money?
We caught him and made him return it all. Then we cut him off. I'm fed up. I'm really sorry for the trouble my son caused, especially at your wedding. If he troubles you again, please contact me right away.
Thank you so much, sir.
The executive director looked very tired, perhaps due to the stress. Having a child with such a character brought unimaginable hardships to parents. Kevin felt truly sorry for him. He strongly hoped his unfilial son, Rory, would receive the punishment he deserved. A few months later, on a holiday afternoon, Kevin and I went for a drive. The purpose was to get our child to nap. When we put him in the car, he fell asleep quickly. There was a large river running through the city, with vast riverbanks on both sides.
When I was gazing out absent-mindedly, I let out an unintentional "Aw, what's wrong? Did you forget something?" "No, it's not that. I just saw someone down by the riverbank." "It was him." "Him? You mean Rory?" "Yes. He was dirty and disheveled, walking with others dressed similarly."
Even from a distance, his walk and gestures made it clear. It was undoubtedly Rory. Now, it seemed he found a place to stay somewhere along this riverbank. He was probably scraping his living by collecting cans and old books to sell. He might be lining up for soup kitchens, or perhaps even scavenging leftover food. I didn't feel sorry for him. Rather, it seemed fitting for someone like him. Rory, who hurt my friend and tried to ruin Kevin's and my wedding. For years in prison was too lenient. I thought he deserved to atone for his actions over a much longer period. Hoped he would fall even lower than where he was now. I strongly wished that. Life for Kevin and me has been smooth sailing. Calm, without major troubles, just as we'd hoped. Our relationship with both of our in-laws is good, and our child is growing up healthy. Neither Kevin nor I have any intention of spoiling our child. We don't want to raise someone who finds joy in others' suffering. What's right and what's wrong. What it means to behave as a decent human being. I want to be a parent who can properly convey these values. Rory's crimes have led us to these convictions. In that sense, his existence may not be entirely useless.